It's Marathon Sunday at Ottawa Race Weekend. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Rogers TV. We're very excited to bring you coverage of the 2019 Ottawa Marathon at Tamarack Ottawa Race Weekend, the 45th edition of the Ottawa Marathon. It is a beautiful Sunday morning, and thousands of runners are getting ready to fulfill a personal quest. Along with British Olympian and longtime running commentator Tim Hutchings, I'm Mark Sutcliffe. Thank you for joining us on Rogers TV. And Tim, it's quiet at the finish line now, but soon thousands of runners will be gathering at the start line. We are expecting moderate temperatures today. The weather isn't perfect for running, but it's going to be cooperative, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's much quieter than it was last night at the finish, that 10K. But the conditions, yeah, they're 8 out of 10, I think, Mark. You know, it's about 16 degrees centigrade. It is going to climb up to 17, 18, possibly 19. It's a little bit heavy, the air, because there was a lot of rain last night, so the humidity is going to climb. For the elite, it's probably okay. You know, they're going to be running for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. For the guys who are out there 4 or 5 hours, the citizen runners, yeah, it could get a little bit too warm for those that second half.
And there's a bit of humidity in the air. It's not a cool 16 degrees right now, so it's not quite the ideal temperature for running, but we've certainly had warmer conditions in late May in Ottawa. It's been a cool spring so far this year, a late spring, and we'll talk about the course a little bit over the course of our coverage as well, because there have been changes to it due to spring flooding in Ottawa. There's a bridge that is closed, and because of that, the course is a little bit different from in past years. But the air is filled with anticipation. We can certainly say that, Tim, because there are elite runners here from around the world. We're excited about the elite race. The elite men and the elite women will be watching those elite runners very, very closely and telling their stories this morning. There are some Canadian Olympians in this race as well, people like Reed Coolset, who is on a quest to qualify for the Olympics again for next year. Krista Duchesne, who finished third in the 2018 Boston Marathon, is here and running today. Rachel Hanna is running as well, a Canadian elite runner. And then there are all of the runners who are here, some of them completing, there's a handful, small number, who are completing their 45th consecutive Ottawa Marathon, others who have done it dozens of times, others who have done it a handful of times, and some who are running their very first marathon. And then coming up shortly, we'll have the start of the half marathon as well. Some 8,500 runners expected to participate in the half marathon. So we're looking forward to seeing the start of that race as well. There are so many stories at a marathon, Tim. Everybody here for a different reason. Bart Yasso, the legendary runner and journalist, author, has said that everybody takes the same path from the start to the finish, but everybody takes a different path to the start line.
Well, that's exactly right, and you know that's what I love about marathon racing. Every individual has a unique story, unique motivations and reasons for running, but they're all achieving something special. You know, as I've got my own race back in the UK, and it is one of the most gratifying things for the organising team is all the emails that come in after the race saying thanks a lot. You know, I achieved this, I raised that amount of money for this charity, and so on. Yeah, it's a special day for the city, and you know it's great. It's sort of getting involved in life at the next level, and it's open to everybody.
Absolutely. And you know, I think back to my first marathon, which was here in 2004, 15 years ago. I think about the other times that I've run this race. I've done it 4 or 5 times. I've done some of the other distances at this event as well. I've participated probably a dozen times in this event. And when I was walking through the start area this morning on my way here to see you and to start the broadcast, I have to admit there was part of me that wished I was getting ready to go to the start line and run this race this morning.
That's because you're a newbie. You're a newbie. 15 years.
Yeah. I don't think I'm a newbie anymore after all the marathons
I've been retired 30 years.
Yeah, but this is special. There are a lot of people who have worked very hard for this. A marathon is not something you do at the last minute. People have been training for months, since the beginning of January, in some cases, some people even longer than that, and looking forward to this day, counting down to this day, building their lives around the training that they have been doing for this marathon for a long time. So we wish them all luck. Let's take a look at what the event records are for the Ottawa Marathon. The men's record, Yemeni Sigai, set in 2014 here in Ottawa, 2 hours, 6 minutes, 54 seconds. And the women's record, 2 hours, 22 minutes, 17 seconds, set last year by Galete Burka. And the men's record in particular, there are runners in this race who have gone faster than that.
There are 5 men in the race today who have gone faster than that course record. It was a very special run, and let's not forget that the Sigai, he won it by 1 minute 22 seconds. That's a gulf. That's a big gap. It's anything but a dip finish. So I think he set a new standard that might be very tough for some of these guys to meet. You know, it's a very quick course. There's a couple of bumpy sections. You know this better than me, Mark, but there's a couple of little bumpy sessions. And you look at the absolute quickest courses in the world, your Rotterdam, Chicago, Berlin, and they are pretty much dead flat. There's hardly any variation at all. So it's a quick course, but in these conditions, as I said earlier, I reckon it's about an 8 out of 10 day. That might make it too tough. They need a 9.5 out of 10 day to hit that time.
So much of, we could talk about this over the course of our coverage today, but marathon running really has reached a point where so many of the athletes are so finely calibrated to running their best on a particular day that all of those variables come into play. And you really do, if you're going to have a personal best or you're going to have some type of record time, there isn't a lot of margin of error. You've got to have everything fall into place perfectly for that to happen. And that's why, for example, the world record consistently gets broken in Berlin now, because that is the best course of all the major events in the world.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, what I love about marathon running for everybody participating is it forces a sort of discipline on your life. A more monastic lifestyle, plenty of sleep, good diet, get that training done for the masses. But for the elite athletes, many of whom seem incredibly laid back when they're walking around the hotel, they too have had to adhere to that same regimen for many months. And they do get it right. The top athletes that are here, that have been flown in from all over the world, are incredibly fiercely disciplined individuals, and I admire that immensely.
All right, we're very excited to have as part of our coverage this morning elite Canadian runner Tanya Jones, who is standing by with our Kimothy Walker. Kimothy?
Here we are at the start line. Everything is starting to fill up. It's amazing. In the last 40 minutes when we arrived, there was nobody around, and all of this structure hadn't been set up. Tanya Jones, one of the greatest Canadian runners in history. What are the athletes thinking this morning? They were pretty soaking wet yesterday.
Well, Mother Nature is definitely a big factor in any marathon, so it's been a roller coaster ride, and not sure what would happen, knowing it big downpour yesterday. I think actually it's been really positive. It's probably blown the humidity out of the air. It still feels a little bit humid, and to me it is a little bit warm. It's about 16 degrees right now, but when you're standing around it feels a little chilly. But I think for a marathon this is probably a good place to land.
Okay. And for all of the recreational runners, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and that there has been very little warm weather training time in this city, right? So how does that affect people and their goals for time?
Yeah, I think that's a concern for any Canadian coming out of the winter, particularly this winter. You're right, we haven't had a chance to do any training in warmer weather, so we don't acclimate to that warmer temperature. And in May, yeah, that temperature and humidity could really pop and catch us. So I think this is a blessing. Yeah, 16 degrees and a little cool. It's just right.
Looking at the elites today, what will their challenges be, and who are you keeping your eye on?
It's a very fast field for sure. I think there's on the Canadian side. I think on the women's side we have Rachel Hanna and Kristen Duchesne. And then Reed Cousselet on the men's side. So these are all very experienced runners, and I believe all of them have run here in Ottawa before. So they definitely know the Ottawa crowds, and they know the Ottawa roads, and I'm sure they're very excited to be here today.
Speaking of crowds and roads, we're getting all the people coming with their clappers and everything, getting ready. The one thing I did want to ask you about, because you brought a colleague who's behind camera, and we were talking about these individuals who help when people need a little bit of boost near the end, and they'll run a marathon today, just going back and forth.
Yeah, it's very exciting. There's group of folks that will go out during the race, and they're ready to help anyone who needs it to get them across the line today. So
would that have helped you and the crowds cheering? Does it actually like spur you on?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really individual thing where some people want to run on their own. They want that, they want to do it themselves. And but there is definitely a point in a race where you need that crowd. You need someone saying the right thing. You need the coach on the sidelines, or maybe it's your mom or one of your kids that just says something you need.
Well, we'll be at the finish line later, and it's seeing the tens of thousands of people who have come out to cheer on all of these athletes. But for now, we'll go back to you.
All right, thank you, Kimothy. Thank you, Tanya. Great to have you as part of our coverage. We'll be relying on Tanya's insights and knowledge of some of the lead runners in this event coming up shortly. Tanya alluded to it a moment ago, Tim. It is so true. We think of running as an individual sport. It is only your legs that carry you from the start line to the finish line, and yet there are so many dynamics involving other runners, whether it's an amateur runner who is simply running alongside a friend or somebody they've trained with and prepared for this event with, or whether it is an elite runner who is jockeying for position with other elite runners. There is something about sharing the load in a marathon, even if you are just running by yourself in one respect.
Well, there is, but perfect preparation makes for perfect performance. And I think 95% of the cake is the training and the months that lead up to it. And each athlete, be it an everyday citizen runner or the elite athletes, have got a team behind them. I mean, I always think those people need a shout out, because without that team, and I like to refer to the athlete themselves as the point of a lance, without the shaft behind it, without all that support, there's no power, there's no focus. So these elite athletes, they've all got coaches, family members, physios, managers. They've got a bunch of people who help get them to the start line in absolutely perfect condition. That's the elite. And you cannot discount the fact that this all too well as a runner yourself. That the family have to cooperate. They have to be sympathetic to that lifestyle where you're gone half the time, you're out running or you're fast asleep.
Yeah, it is a constant, especially if you're juggling other things in your life. It's a constant challenge of when are you going to fit in the run, right? And especially with a training for a marathon, there are some long runs involved. You've got to get out sometimes for, if you're an amateur runner, a 3-hour, 4-hour training run sometimes. So again, this is no small task for all the people who are participating today, and it is something to be proud of. There will be many people celebrating at the end of this event today, which gets started in just a few minutes from now. Let's take a look at who will be at the front of the pack in the men's race today at the 45th Ottawa Marathon. Let's talk about some of these runners, including the Canadians like Reed Coulsett.
Yeah, well, Gerrit Verlecker there is at the top for a particular reason. At 2:4:50, he's the fastest in the field by a minute, as you can see. However, he is 32. His personal bests all go back to 2012 or earlier. He needs a good race. There's a degree of stagnation to his career, so I wonder if he'll pull out a big one today. Abira Kuma, great all-rounder, very, very good track racer. He's done 10 marathons and his average is 2:10. So, his last race was a very, very strong one. He ran 2:05:50 in Rotterdam in April last year. He's a big name, and I do think the Ethiopians will have the dominance here today. Adugna Takele, for example, he's done 8 marathons. He's a 2:06 guy. That was in January this year. So, the confidence you get from a good recent performance is massive. There's an old adage, you're as good as your last race, and his last race was top-notch.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out, though, as well, that you can't run too many marathons in a year, right? These elite runners zero in on 2 or 3 events per year where they are trying to deliver a top-caliber performance. It's not like if you run a race in one city and it doesn't go well, you can just get back out there a couple of weeks later. It's not that easy. All right, let's hear more about the elite men and women in this race. Kimothy is standing by with the elite athlete coordinator at Ottawa Race Weekend, Manny Rodriguez. Kimothy?
I'm here with Manny Rodriguez, who goes out all over the world and finds the very best. And just tell us a little bit, Manny, about the field here for the marathoners.
So the field for the marathoners that we're looking at is in the men's, we have 6 really strong athletes, 3 from Kenya, 3 from Ethiopia. Then we have a Moroccan in there also, so we'll see how they do. I think, great weather for it. In the women's field, it's primarily an Ethiopian strong field. There's a couple of Kenyans, but I think it'll be an Ethiopian affair.
What about Canadians? How do you think they'll fare today?
I think we're going to see some great performance from Canadians. We have some very strong Canadian women with Dana Podolsky, Krista Duchesne, and Rachel Hanna. And then the men, Reed always, he's trying to run a very solid run that'll get him in position for the Olympics. So it'll be interesting to see.
How is weather going to impact today? It's probably going to be a little better than it was last night.
This is great weather. It's overcast, so that keeps temperature down. Humidity is a little bit high, but otherwise, it's great. And if the wind stays away too, that makes a big difference for the athletes.
Really? And last night with the pouring rain and then the race of the men and the women, how do you think the whole evening went for you? You spend all year long planning this.
It went really well. Yeah, it was about great racing, and it was. I mean, I didn't get to see the women's play out, but I heard it was an amazing race between them. In the men's, they were a pack of 5, did pretty well. It was 6 or 7K before things started to split up, and so can't ask for better racing.
Well, good luck today. Have fun, and then you'll be able to get some sleep. You said you got 3 hours sleep?
Oh, yeah.
That's usual for this weekend. I think I got 3.
All right, thank you, Kimothy, and thank you, Manny. We should point out, Manny has been such a terrific elite athlete coordinator here at Ottawa Race Weekend, a volunteer in that role for so many years, and he's done a terrific job. His work is gratefully appreciated by all of the people associated with this event. So let's look at the finish from last year's Ottawa Marathon. Take a look here as Yemeni Sagai makes it to the finish line and completes the race just under a year ago.
Yeah, he set the course record back in 2014, so 4 years prior to this victory last year. His time last year was 2:08. And looks pretty comfortable, doesn't he? Glorious isolation there. That's nice when you can enjoy that last couple of kilometres without any pressure and cruise in, so to speak, to earn that big prize money and take a big title. This is an IAAF gold label race. It has real stature and prestige in the road racing world. But yeah, he looks really strong. I wasn't here last year, haven't seen this coverage before, but that is a comfortable 2:08. Wow.
Yeah.
She's getting fast.
There you go. So that was last year. You never know what you're going to get at the finish of a marathon, even if there is a bunch of runners that is close together at 41 kilometers. You can have somebody break away from that group. You can have somebody who turns it on, who just has that extra burst of energy at the end, or you can have a very close finish. We saw that in Boston this year. It was a sprint down to the finish in Boston. We've had that kind of finish here in Ottawa before as well. So you just don't know what you're going to get until the last minute.
No, that's right. I mean, I think what I do like about marathon racing is that there is time to get your race right. You look at Eliud Kipchoge, the world record holder from Berlin last September. His victory in London 4 or 5 weeks ago was a supreme example of perfect execution. He hung in there, kept the pace very quick through the third quarter of the race. In the last 10K, began to turn the screw on an astonishingly strong field behind him. He ran a time that only he has bettered with his world record, but he won by about 25 seconds, which wasn't that much on the day. The guy behind him was the second fastest runner-up ever. The guy in third was the fastest third placer ever, but his execution was supreme, and I love that unwinding of the race and the way that the winner often turns the screw in the last kilometre or two and just nails that win.
Yeah, there is something about that final. You're spent, and yet some runners, depending on the day, of course, it's not just a function of their moral fiber, but just what's physically going on with them that day. Some runners have the ability to turn it up in that final few hundred meters, and others just don't have any energy left at that point and can't keep pace. So we'll see if the day unfolds like that. Let's take a look at at the finish for the women last year in 2018, and this was a record-setting performance, of course, by Galeta Burka. It wasn't just a course record, but it was also the fastest marathon by a woman on Canadian soil. So it was a record-breaking finish for Galeta Burka in many respects.
Yeah, 2:22.17. That again is a nice way to finish the race. No pressure, able to stride through the line, arms aloft in a very, very quick time. 2:22.17 is top notch, and it's kind of, I think when you see times like that banged out on this course, it's a stamp of approval on the city and the nature of the marathon route around the city that Manny and his team, and John Halverson as well, of course, have managed to lay out. It's very easy to forget how tough it is to shut down a city of this scale, you know, the capital city, and so much of it closed down for the runners.
All right, they are performing the national anthem now at the start line. Let's go there live. About 3,500 runners ready to race in the Ottawa Marathon. It will start in about 8 minutes from now. You saw the amateur field lined up at the start line with the national anthem being performed in downtown Ottawa. They're on Elgin Street. And in just a moment, we'll see the elite runners go in front of them and prepare to start this race. The elite men and the elite women will start at the same time in this event. There isn't a separate start for the women, as there are at many elite marathons, and we'll be able to watch closely as things shake out in what promises to be a very interesting morning. Reid Coulsett, we should talk a little bit about him. 39-year-old Canadian who has competed at the Olympics before. For many years, there were no Canadian men fast enough to qualify to compete at the Olympics. And then finally we had a breakthrough, and there were three. Eric Gillis, Dylan Wykes, who was the Canadian champion in the 10K last night here in Ottawa, and Reid Coulsett. And Reid wants to go back to the Olympics in 2020 in Tokyo, and he's hoping to achieve a qualifying time to do that here today. So there's a lot at stake for Reid Coulsett.
Yeah, Reid hoping to break 2:13 today. You know, it's a realistic goal, I think, for a guy of 39. He knows he's past his best. He says he just doesn't have the speed he used to have, although he finds the longer training still pretty easy. That's bread and butter to him. But Reid's gone through the gears, you know. He's been a great track runner in his time. He's run fast for middle distances and long distances on the track, and then he's really nailed it as a marathon runner. I suppose what's frustrating for Reid is that his PR is 2:10. He's never gone through that 2:10 barrier, which he would love to have done. He's run 2:10 or within a minute of his personal best about 5 times, I think. But he's got a very cool head, and I'm sure he'll get it right today. You know, he was planning to do Hamburg in April, just a month or so back, and he got a back injury, so he put it off and refocused for this one, and he says he's ready.
Yeah, he's done some training at altitude as well. He was in Boulder, Colorado, was able to bring his family with him for that. And again, as you were alluding to earlier, it is, even for an elite runner who doesn't have a full-time job, there are still other priorities you have to balance, and you can't just go anywhere. Fortunately, he has a young family that he was able to bring with him to Boulder, Colorado, and spend some time there training at altitude. And perhaps over the course of the broadcast we'll have a chance to talk about what that can do for a runner. It's increasingly part of the regimen for many runners who are competing at the front of the pack. But we'll see what kind of race Reed Coolset runs this morning. Let's take a look at the elite women's field. That's worth talking about as well. And as you can see, I think it's been 9 years in a row that an Ethiopian has been the top woman at the Ottawa Marathon, and there are many people who feel this will be number 10.
Yeah, Tofi Sagai at 2:19 is in that very select group of ladies. It's a growing club who have broken 2:20, but it's still only about 25 strong. Bethlehem Moges, well, 2:24 could be good enough for the win today. I suspect it'll be something like that in what are going to be fairly humid conditions, albeit pretty good conditions. And again, you can see the dominance of the Ethiopians there. Krista Duchesne at 42 certainly knows she's well past her best. I had a long chat with her yesterday about it, but again, she's hoping to do something around the 2:30, 2:35 mark. So I don't think they'll be mixing it with the best of the East Africans, she or indeed Rachel Hanna. But it'll be interesting to see what Krista can do. She's got a very, very experienced and smart head on her shoulders.
Krista Duchesne is a very smart runner. Of course, she finished third at the Boston Marathon in 2018. Ran it again this year. Wasn't as good a day for her at that event, but she's very realistic about her chances. She, along with Lenny Marchand, of course, on the same day broke the long-standing Canadian record, which has since been beaten. But for many years, it was held by Sylvia Ruger, and Krista Duchesne and Lenny Marchand broke it on the same day. Lenny running a little bit faster than Krista, and that was her personal best, that 2:28.32. Krista's such an inspiring story. She has told many stories about her own experiences as a runner and how she juggles family and work and running. She's a terrific inspiration to so many women who run, and she also she's just such a warm and engaging person whose career started as an amateur runner. The first time she ran Boston Marathon, she qualified like any other amateur runner. Her first marathon, I think she did something in roughly 3.5 hours. So there was never any expectation when she started running that she was going to go to the Olympics, or that she was going to break the Canadian record, or that she would be finishing third at the Boston Marathon as a member of the elite field. That was never in her sights when she started running, and she took an hour off her time through consistent training over a long period of time and discovered she was a very competitive runner. It's a great story. So we are just a couple of minutes away now from the start of the Ottawa Marathon. You can see some of the elite women and elite men who are gathering at the start line. They start on Elgin Street in Ottawa, and they will run for a time on the Queen Elizabeth Drive next to the historic Rideau Canal in downtown Ottawa. There are some slight adjustments to the route. The water levels in Ottawa, due to rain and snow melting and a delayed spring, have been at record levels in many areas, and as a result of that, there is a bridge that is normally part of this race, the Chaudière Crossing, that was closed, and so it cannot be part of the race course this year. And because of that, they've had to reroute. The decision was made a couple of weeks ago to change the route slightly. Many of the components of the route remain the same, but the course was changed slightly and then remeasured again, because it has to be certified as an IAAF Gold event and as a Boston qualifier as well for the amateur runners. So it has been recertified, and it's ready to go this morning. Some of the elite runners now being introduced. You can see them at the front of the pack. There will be pace setters as well. We should talk about that. During the initial stages of this race, we're going to see a group of pace setters at the front of the pack with some of the elite runners that we've already talked about tucked in behind them. And those pace setters are there to kind of control the tempo in the early going.
Yeah, their role absolutely critical, Mark. You know, usually they go to about halfway or maybe a little bit further. Indeed, I understand some of the male pacemakers today, for the lead men, might go to 30k, which is pretty much 3/4 distance. But their job, as you say, is to set a nice steady pace and equilibrium, and take a lot of the psychological burden of maintaining the tempo away from the guys who are going to go all the way to the finish line. So their role to make it nice and steady, even splits for each kilometre, keep that pace steady and set up a nice rhythm. Very, very important indeed for the end result.
Love these final few seconds before the race starts. We're expecting it to start in the next 20 seconds or so, but when I've been at the start line of an event like this, I start thinking to myself, all of the preparation is over. There's nothing you can do now except run. That's all that's left to do. Just run from here to the finish line. 42.2 kilometers, 26.2 miles. And here we go. The Ottawa Marathon is underway. The 45th edition of this event in downtown Ottawa. The runners running north on Elgin Street toward the National War Memorial, and they will loop around to the right, and soon they will be on Queen Elizabeth Drive. There you see the lead men right off the bat. And again, we are going to see, for the most part, in the front of the picture for a long time, we are going to see the pace setters in this race.
Yes, the pace setter's role, as I say, very important, and we will see them across the front there. You know, it's a controversial issue because in Berlin a few years ago they used to have 5 or 6 pacemakers across the front of the lead pack. And I used to call the race, commentating the race, and for half the distance and more, you couldn't really see the athletes who were going to race the whole way. So they've adjusted that now in Berlin. They have a couple of pacemakers and even tell any others to sit at the back of the pack and then come to the front when it's their turn to do that important work.
And there you see some of the thousands of other runners who will be traveling the same course as the elite athletes, people who have been training for months for this moment, the Ottawa Marathon. You see runners shaking loose their limbs as they start to run. And here are the elite men making the turn onto Colonel By Drive in downtown Ottawa.
And this is nice running, Mark. Slightly downhill there on that big curb, so that really gets them off to a fast start and sets it up nicely. It means that they're early splits, they're early kilometre splits, and I think every kilometre is marked, but certainly we'll be trying to get their 5 kilometre splits. Those will come through pretty quickly, I'm sure, early on. And it's always nice to bank some good running, like almost a cushion of time. These fellas are wanting to get through the front, but guys are hoping to get through halfway in 63 minutes, clearly 2:06 pace. And there are 3 pacemakers, Kogo, Sang and Correa, who are tasked with laying down that early pace. And going perhaps even to 30 kilometres. And actually, chatting to Manny yesterday, he confirmed that these pacemakers can finish the race if they want. Yeah. It's a controversial topic, that one. More of that later, perhaps, because, well, I always feel that if they're a pacemaker, they should be a pacemaker and not a competitor.
Yeah, having said that, if they end up traveling the distance in that time, it's hard to take away from them the fact that they've actually run the event.
It doesn't.
They don't have any special advantage.
Yeah, no, it doesn't delegitimize their performance. I always used to like to stand on the start line knowing who I was going to race against.
Right. Yeah, so you can see the pace setters at the front of the pack here already, and they're the ones who'll be checking their watches more often than others. Looks like we've completed the first kilometer. There is a red banner just in the background a moment ago that symbolized the first kilometer. So just over 3 minutes for that. Not surprising. That's around what we would expect.
3 minutes per kilometre is 2 hours and 7-minute pace. Just a reminder of that course record, 2:06.54 by Segai back in 2014 when he won by over a minute, 2:06.54, and they're pretty much bang on that sort of pace now. Correa here, well, he doesn't have a marathon personal best. I suspected he'd take out the early tempo because his half marathon best is only 64 minutes. So I suspect he'll last for about 10 kilometres, maybe 15 kilometres, not much more in that fluorescent green top.
And you can see next to him is Ezra Sang of Kenya, who is another one of the pace setters. And soon we'll be able to tell you who is in the mix in the group behind those elite runners. It's a group of about 10 runners right now at the start of the Ottawa Marathon, traveling on Colonel By Drive, heading south right now through downtown Ottawa.
Separated from the rest of the field very quickly indeed. You know, Reed Coulsat, who's got his great training partner and friend John Mason pacing for him. John hoping to go to about 25k, I think, today before Reed Coulthard will understandably, even this early into the race, Mark, they've been running for, 4.5 minutes, be a couple of hundred metres behind. That's expected, and that gap will just grow and grow. And in fact, Reed was saying, as the top Canadian in the race, certainly he's very capable, he was saying he needs to be very, very disciplined here today, because he knows he's going to spend most of the second half of the race running solo. So he wants to get halfway, having run conservatively and feeling pretty fresh.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges for someone like Reed Coulthard, or anybody else for that matter, who's trying to aim for a particular time, is you may spend a lot of time running alone. You don't have, even though Reed Coulthard is an elite runner and an Olympian, he doesn't have a group like this that he's going to be part of for this race. Many of the runners are just a couple hundred meters away from us here at the finish line, just on the other side of the Rideau Canal, and yet so far from the finish line in another respect. They have many, many miles to travel before they are entitled to cross this finish line behind us, and yet we can see them from the finish line here. I can remember the first marathon that I ran in 2004 here in Ottawa. The halfway point of the race brought you close to the finish line, and I could hear, as I just crossed the halfway point, I could hear the energy at the finish line as the elite athletes were approaching the finish. And I still had half the race to run, and I could hear them announcing the finish of the elite race. So that will be, the course is different now, so it's not quite the same experience in that respect, but many of the runners will be very close to the finish line very early in this race, and then run all over the city before returning to our vantage point here. Once again, it is the group of pace setters who are at the front of the pack. Once things shake out a little bit and we're able to separate the elite women from the rest of the field that's in behind this group of elite men, we'll be able to show you some pictures of that group. It takes some time early on to separate the women from that group, because of course the women are starting within a group of other runners and not on their own.
And when you get a mixed race like this, Mark, you know, the fact is that a lot of good male runners, club standard male runners, or national standard I should say, actually latch onto the leading women, because they know those leading women have got pacemakers. They know they're going to be running a very disciplined, smart, steady race, and probably at around 222, 224 tempo. And if that's your ambition as a male runner, let's say with a personal best of 227, 226, what better way than to latch onto the back of that little pack of the elite ladies? And it can cause problems, because you get coverage on camera in races, I've covered it before, of the elite pack of ladies, and there's 20 guys around them, all sort of feeding off that pace that the leading ladies are running. So we will of course get to those leading ladies eventually, but very early stages. They've been running for less than 8 minutes so far, and Correa doing a good job. I get the feeling it's pretty quick at the moment. I'd like to get a split. If we can see one of those kilometre markers, we will get a 5k split, I'm pretty sure. That would be the first significant one. Yeah,
they will cross a timing mat at 5 kilometers, so we'll be able to see at that time what the pace is, the official pace, or the chip time pace. But for now, we'll be watching to see sometime in the next minute or so, we expect we'll see the 3 kilometer flag. And at that time, we'll be able to get a sense of the early pace in the Ottawa Marathon. They're about 8.5 minutes into the race now, and they are continuing to run away from downtown Ottawa. We should soon have some early pictures of the lead women, who are also being led by pace setters. Yeah, that is the lead ladies there, that's the lead women right now, yeah. So they're about to make the turn onto Pretoria Bridge. Turning off Colonel By onto Pretoria Bridge, and soon we'll be turning on to Queen Elizabeth Drive. It's mild this morning. We were talking about the temperature earlier. It's not hot, but it's not cool either. So it'll be interesting to see how the temperature and the conditions affect the runners. It's a little bit sticky as well.
Yeah, I think
the elite, the 3K banner has just disappeared in the background. I'm just looking at the pictures of the elite men that we can see here. So it was probably about 15 seconds ago that the men crossed that 3K area.
Yeah, which would have made it about 9:15. So they're moving at 3:05.
That's a rough guess at this point, anyway.
Yeah, rough guess, because that would put them on around 2:09 tempo for that first 3K. If that's the case, then it's nice and steady, Mark. It's not super fast, but good and steady, and it sets it up. And there's various theories doing the rounds, but a lot of people believe that negative splits for the super elite men is the best way to run a marathon. That means going out for the first half slightly slower and coming back with a quicker second half. They call that negative splits. So if they were to go out today in 63.5 minutes, for example, instead of 63, they may get the benefit of that through the second half and run a quicker second section.
Yeah, there's so much science to running now, and so many debates about what the best way to approach a marathon is, and I find it fascinating because, as we were talking about earlier, you can't go out and run a marathon every weekend, so you can't. It's difficult to test for all the different variables that can produce a great outcome in a marathon, because you can't just do it over. You can't just change one variable and run the same scenario again. So determining what is the best way to run a marathon, how to fuel for it, how to pace yourself over the course of the race, what conditions are ideal. It's difficult to run enough scenarios to really judge that. And so there is some art and some science to it. And of course, all of this is relevant in the context of the effort to have somebody break 2 hours, because they're trying to get every single component and every possible variable controlled to an extent that someone can break 2 hours. There was the effort a couple of years ago that produced, 2 hours and 31 seconds, 32
2 hours
seconds?
and 25 seconds.
25,
and there's
okay.
another one planned for this
they're
coming
gonna do it
October
again,
in
right?
London.
Yeah.
It's a very controversial area because they don't adhere to the rules that the sport is governed by in terms of times receiving validity when they're achieved. And for that reason, I've got mixed feelings about it, because it seems almost that the organisers can pick and choose the rules they want to adhere to and throw out certain others. And that therefore negates the tradition of the event going back many decades, and the certain criteria that people have had to adhere to have a performance called a national record or a world record, or just a personal best, are very, very well respected in the sport. It's and to toss some of those rules aside and say we're going to try and break 2 hours, but hey, some of these rules are a little inconvenient, is
But it won't be a world record if it happens that way.
It won't, but they look, of course there's one section of society and some of the supporters of those events, those shots at getting to the moon almost, who are sort of whispering that it's a world record, and it's absolutely not.
Yeah, it's but it does still. I think it is still an interesting process, because it produces some data and some knowledge and some expertise around the area of how do we get faster, right? What are the different elements that it takes to get faster?
And it knocks down psychological barriers too, of course. That's probably the critical thing, that if Eliud Kipchoge, for example, who is the main man, he holds that world record from Berlin, 2:01:39, I think, from last September. If he were to break 2 hours, let's say, in London, in October, people will say, yep, the 2 hour barrier is gone, and it'll make times of 2:01, 2:02 more achievable. And at the moment, only 3 men in history have gone under 2:03. And it's a bit, people equate it to the sub 4 minute mile when Bannister went under 4 minutes in 1954. All of a sudden, a bunch of guys started going through it in the following years.
All right, we can see that the group of lead men remains consistent, being led by 3 pace setters, Korir and Sang among them. And I did notice in the background there is Albert Korir of Kenya, who is one of the runners who is in that group. You can see him on the right side of that group wearing the white t-shirt, in behind Kogo, who is one of the pace setters. And then as well, Getu Faleke is in there. I can see him. Just trying to get a look at who some of the others are that are part of that group.
Yeah, it's hard to see, isn't it? Behind Korir and Sang and Kogo, the 3 pacemakers doing a great job.
Martin Koske is in there as well, I believe.
Yeah, Martin Koske is a 2:06 performer. That was in just last October, actually. Only 7 months or so ago. He ran 2:06 in Frankfurt for second place. But I've just been told that at 4K, the lead men were 12 minutes and 2 seconds. So our guesstimate a couple of minutes back was fairly inaccurate. It does mean they're running pretty much exactly 3 minutes per kilometre, and that therefore puts them on schedule for something very close to the course record mark. It means they're running at about 2 hours and 7 minutes pace exactly. That's quick.
And there's the lead women's group as well. You can see there are some pace setters for the lead women leading the way, then a group of women in behind, and then as sometimes will be the case, there are some other runners, kind of sub-elite men or strong amateur athletes who try to stick with the elite women. If they're the kind of runner who can do a 2:30 marathon or something in that range, there are runners who will try to stay with that group.
Yes, the big fella in the grey vest there, Namo, on his vest is Kedir Namo, is the man who, from Ethiopia, is tasked with going out at 2:23 tempo, so within touching distance almost of that course record from Burka last year. Remember, 2:22.17 she ran. Namo here is tasked with getting that tempo absolutely right. It means getting to halfway at 2:23 in 71 minutes, 71 and a half minutes, something like that. He's on 7 marathons, never placed in the top 10 himself. He's a 2:19 performer, in fact. There's one or two of these ladies would give him a very good race if he went the whole way. But, yeah, I think his job is to get them nice and steadily to the half marathon in about 71 minutes.
There's a lot of money at stake in this event. The winner for the men and for the women will each receive $30,000. There's prize money all the way down to 8th place in this event. The top Canadian in each field will get $5,000. There are incentives for setting records as well, so it could be a big payday for somebody in this event. And if there is a sprint to the finish, there will be a lot at stake because the second place finisher gets $15,000. So it's a difference of $15,000 between the top prize and the second place award.
Yeah, that's big prize money. I mean, it's big prize money here in Canada, back in London, UK, but if you take it to the Rift Valley, Mark, you can multiply it many, many times in its purchasing power. So many of these elite Ethiopians and Kenyans are, in their own environment, multi-millionaires. I mean, they're very wealthy people. They own big farms, they own many, many apartments that they rent out, and they can change the lives of not just their immediate families, but their wider families, and indeed often their entire communities. I mean, I would love to see more stories of that, actually, about what these great East Africans can do when they take that money home. It's really heartwarming.
So we can tell you that the elite men's field was through the 5 kilometer mark in 15 minutes and 9 seconds. 15 minutes and 9 seconds for the pace setters, and in the group of runners who were with the pace setters at that point in the race, there is Martin Koske, Getu Faleke, Albert Career, Abera Kuma, and a group of really another 3 or 4 runners in addition to that, all crossing at about 15 minutes and 10 seconds. So that's just over 3 minutes a kilometer in the early going at the Ottawa Marathon.
Yeah, 3:02 tempo for the fellas is 2:08 pace. So we're being given some unofficial times from the lead vehicles through our headsets, and then we're getting the official timing system splits, which we will go with, I think, because that is what is on the internet that everybody can see and absorb. But both races looking pretty quick at the moment. On another shot, we're getting a good view of Reed Coulsat tucked in right behind in the slipstream of John Mason, who's a big, powerful fellow with a massive red beard. And they are together, but Coulsat all on his own, tucked in behind John Mason. So it's working out, it's rolling out okay.
There we go. There are the 2 Canadian men at the front. John Mason, 31-year-old, who has a 2:15 personal best. And Reed Coulsat tucked in behind him. You can't really see Reed Coulsat right now. There he is, just appearing in the background. And there's the Canadian Olympian Reed Coulsat. So we'll see how Reed's day unfolds, taking a bit of nutrition there. We can tell you that among the elite women at the front of that group, they crossed 5 kilometers in 17 minutes and 15 seconds. And Shuko Gameno is one of them. Tigis Gurma is another member of that lead group. And there are several other runners in there as well. So we are expecting it to be one of the Ethiopians that wins the race for the women. That seems to be a pattern at Ottawa Race Weekend. So we'll see how the race unfolds.
Yeah, that's a nice steady pace for the ladies. If they've gone to a 5K in 17:15 mark, that is about 2:24 pace. So good and healthy, nice and steady, and setting it up for an attack on the course record. Although we've got to remember that 2:22 from last year, rather like the men's course record, is a bit of an outlier. It's super fast from Burka 12 months back.
Seeing a bit of sunshine on the course now, which we have not seen. It's been overcast this morning. Yesterday, of course, in the 10K, we had really fair conditions, reasonable conditions for the elite race, but then as soon as the elite runners were across the finish line, the skies opened up and it started pouring, and many of the amateur runners were drenched with rain. So it was not ideal for those amateur runners, but we were able to get the race in on the elite side before the weather really became an issue. We don't expect any precipitation this morning. The issue really today is the temperature, and there's a little bit of a stickiness in the air for this kind of temperature as well. So everyone will be hydrating carefully over the course of this race.
And that is absolutely critical, Mark, of course. You know, taking on those liquids at regular intervals. These elite athletes, of course, yesterday afternoon had to hand in their 8 bottles, their own specially prepared drinks that are put out every 5K along the course, hence 8 bottles. And the mix changes as they get further into the race. I think it's fairly dilute at this stage of the race, and then later on they get more and more energies or glucose, and a more intense glucose mix later in the race. But everybody has their own little concoctions, and there are different products on the market which are being pushed as the new wonder drink for top athletes. Indeed, I know that Eliud Kipchoge uses one in particular and used it to break his world record, but it's a very personal thing. And of course they say if you feel thirsty during a marathon, then you've left it too late. You should be sipping little and often if you're the mass runners, especially those out there for 4 or 5 hours. Just keep sipping a little bit of water. There's water every 3 miles, I think, for the masses out on the course, which is superb.
The elite men are now on Fairmont Avenue in the west end of the city. They've left the area near Dow's Lake, and they are heading into the Civic Hospital area. They're going to travel on Fairmont for a little bit and then make a left turn onto Wellington. You can see the lead women have just passed the Dow's Lake Pavilion. So they are turning onto Preston Street, and there's HMCS Carleton with the circular windows in the background. And they'll soon be making a left turn onto Carling Avenue. And the lead men will soon be turning onto Wellington and traveling through Hintonburg, West Wellington, and a little bit into Westboro before they turn towards the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, and eventually we'll start running into Quebec this morning. The lead men now making their way through the Civic Hospital area.
They've been running for what these athletes now for 23 minutes, Mark. They should be feeling very, very comfortable. This is cruising for these fellas. It's an interesting dynamic because while they should be cruising and they know they've got almost another 2 hours of running ahead of them, they are, if not redlining, they're pushing it along at a very healthy tempo, and this is what they have to get right in training. This is what they have to practice in training. Running hard, running strongly, and yet staying relaxed and conserving energy. It's a very, very fine zone within which they operate. If you go into the red zone, then you pay the price pretty quickly. If you ease back on the throttle too much, then the time drops away, and any chance of a really, really quick performance is lost within a very few kilometers.
I just noticed Reed Coolset dumping a cup of water on his head as he was running past a water station, so that's an early indicator of how the runners may be feeling. Not something you would do if it was 5 degrees, but it's 16 or 17 right now, and it's getting brighter in downtown Ottawa, even if it's not direct sunlight. So for Reid Coolset at this point in the race, just 24 minutes into it, to be dumping some water on his head is indicative, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah. It's I don't want to use the word worrying, but less than 25 minutes on the clock, and if you're pouring water over your head and feeling the heat this early, then it could be a tough second half for Reid Coolsack and many of the other elite out there. You know, obviously that'll still be the first half of the race for the vast majority of the mass runners. But Reid tucked in right behind in the slipstream of John Mason there. Physically, it actually is quite a big help being tucked in the slipstream. The numbers have been run by various research products as to how much benefit you get if you tuck in close behind somebody in terms of wind protection. And it is not insignificant over the full duration of sort of a 20 or 30 kilometre distance. And psychologically, you know, Reid can just tuck in there behind John Mason there, who's a perfect pacemaker because he's such a big fella. He works in the timber industry. He's got shoulders like a boxer, and that is just what you want when you want to get behind somebody and feel that shelter. But psychologically, Reid being sort of dragged along now, and it's probably taking away about 15% of the effort mentally.
John Mason does not have the typical build of a 2-hour, 15-minute marathon runner. Let's be honest.
That's
right?
an understatement.
Yeah.
He
looks more like a football player or a rugby player than an elite athlete.
I mean, I've eaten with Reid and John over the last 2 or 3 days in the Athletes Hotel, and you know, John in Rotterdam, only a month or so, actually about 6 weeks ago in Rotterdam, ran that big PR of 2:15:17. That was on the 7th of April. He runs for the Speed River Track and Field Club, same as Reid, and just loves his running. He's so passionate about running. He's one of these guys he's not super talented. He was never going to be a Reid Coolsack or anybody quicker, but actually he's persevered, and at the age of 31, you know, it's wonderful. I think a lot of Canadians and other runners who know John will have been celebrating that big breakthrough in Rotterdam a month or so back. 2:15 really is nailing it, and it'll get him into other races around the world. It might even get him into Canadian teams. It was so pleasing, and I guess it's a real reward for that perseverance from John.
Yeah. Good look at John Mason and Reid Coolset there, just before we broke away to the lead women and the lead men. Reid Coolset, again, 39 years old. In 2015, ran 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 28 seconds in Berlin. He is a Canadian Olympian 2 times over, and one of that group of almost pioneering new generation of elite Canadian men in the marathon, paving the way for others to think about an Olympic performance. And I know for the women, it was Krista Duchesne and Lanny Marchand who had that breakthrough and were competing for the women in the marathon, and that has led to many others now positioning themselves to compete. We've had both the men's and women's national records broken recently in Canada. Cam Levins with the new Canadian men's record, and he's positioning himself to qualify for the Olympics as well. And it's a complicated thing qualifying for the Olympics, because Reid Coolset, as he's running today, doesn't know exactly what time he has to achieve in order to qualify. They haven't the Canadian Olympic team has not yet set the parameters of what will be a qualifying performance. So you have to go out there and run a good time and then hope that it was fast enough.
Well, yeah, and that's the case the world over. You know, those Tokyo Olympics are still, some 15 months away, and there's hardly a nation on earth whose athletes know whether or not they will have made the team as yet. I think guys like Cam Levins are pretty much penciled in. You know, that Canadian record in Toronto last October was special, 2:09:25 for his debut, and that was a 43-year-old Canadian record that he broke, so it was very special indeed by Cam. And it's a bit like Mo Farah in the UK. His name is pretty much penciled in for the Tokyo team. It's the next 2 or 3 guys who will be battling over the remaining places and won't get any clear indications for many months whether they're in the team or not.
Reid Coolset has just turned on to Wellington, is passing through Hintonburg. Meanwhile, the elite men are in the West Wellington neighborhood of Ottawa. They're actually not far from my house right now as they pass through that neighborhood. The elite women appear to have just passed 7 kilometers. I think I saw the 7K banner in the background. That actually might have been a half marathon banner that we saw in the background. The parts of the course are very similar, but there are some differences. So it was a 7K half marathon banner in the background there. You can see the sunshine now. The men are in shadows as we look at them racing towards the camera right now.
Yeah, and Mark, that sunshine is not good news. It will bring the temperature up. It's going to make it a little bit steamy. The road's very, very damp after all that very heavy rain through the night. And that men's pack to the left of picture, I think, is it? It's hard to pick out this. All we've got is silhouettes, but the men's pack have just run a 2:58 kilometres, so they are really, really tanking along now. They've accelerated over this last couple of kilometres. That is around 2:06 tempo, and it'll be very interesting to see what their 10K split is. Remember, the men was 15:09 at 5K.
3 minutes 1 second per kilometre. 30 minutes 12 seconds at 10K for the lead men.
30:12. Wow.
Yeah, 30:12 for 10K. So think about that. There are not many people who can run 10 kilometers in 30 minutes in the world, even if they got to stop after 10K. And these men are going to run another 32.2K today, perhaps at a pace very close to that. So they're doing 30-minute 10Ks over and over again.
Yeah, that 10K at 30:12 puts them pretty much spot on for 2:07 clocking finishing time. We talk about these projected times so much. What we should really focus upon is the racing, and that will really unfold, I guess, from halfway onwards, Mark. These early kilometres, that first half of the race, you just want to get those under your belt. You want the pacemakers to do a thorough professional job and to be projected into the second half by the pacemakers, where you can start looking around. Right, okay, you sort of reset, you reboot at halfway and figure out who you've got for company.
Men have just crossed Island Park Drive in the west end of the city, and Reed Coulset and John Mason are approaching that area as well. They're a couple of minutes behind the lead group, and the elite women are following on behind them. There's Reed Coulset now. So he crossed these two runners, John Mason and Reed Coulset, crossed the 10K mat in 32:11, a pace of 3 minutes 10 seconds per kilometre.
Yeah, which is it's about 2:15 tempo for Reed Coulset there. Interesting watching the contrasting styles of John Mason there, who's right up on his toes. As we've mentioned, he's a big, powerful fella, but bouncing along on his toes because he knows he's going to drop out at around halfway, whereas Reed, for my money, looks like he's pulling a little bit, looks like he's working a little bit hard. I mean, Reed is quite a flat-footed runner, checking at his watch on a regular basis, making sure he's getting it right almost to the second per kilometre. But Reed looks to me like he's working pretty hard. I think that's just his style. He is, let's not forget, a very, very impressive track racer in the past. He's run 3:40 for 1,500 metres, which, to put it in layman's terms, is equivalent to about a 3:57 miles. So very, very crisp, good speed. Reed has got natural speed. And corresponding track times going up through the distances. He's run great 5,000 metres, which is just over 3 miles, and he brings all that speed and strength to the marathon, and it suits him well.
The lead men have now passed the 11K banner, so that's not surprising given that we're now 33 minutes into the race. They're at about 11.1K and maintaining that pace of just over 3 minutes per kilometre. We should soon see some split times for the top women at the 10K mark. They're about to pass that. So let's keep an eye on the lead women now, because they should be crossing the 10K mat very shortly as they travel down Wellington in the Wellington West neighborhood of Ottawa. Just before they get to Island Park Drive, they should cross the 10K mat any second now. So we'll see what their split times are. Here we go.
Yeah, that's a pretty big pack of ladies, isn't it? You know, Ganemo is there, Gebremeskel, Germa, Moges, Rispa Jabet, I think, is in there as well for Kenya. It's a pack dominated by the Ethiopian contingent, who are glancing at each other, almost seem to be chatting to each other. That's the 10k drinks table they're passing there. They all know which table their drink will be on and where it's positioned on the table. Although one athlete there in the background, wow, she had to stop and go back and grab a bottle off the table. The problem is it's not an exact science getting your drinks during a marathon for these guys. The speed they're moving at is pretty impressive, and while you can practice it in training, every race is slightly different in the way they have tables on just one side of the road or both sides, and where your bottle is going to be on which table. It's not easy.
Yeah, so the split time for the women at 10 kilometers, 34 minutes, 16 seconds. Some of them coming across in 34:17. And so that's 3:25 per kilometer through 10K.
Well, the ladies looking smooth. The lead pack of men looking very comfortable indeed now with that in that bright sunlight. That'll start. Well, it'll take its toll, I guess, in the second half for some of these athletes. There we are at 10k 30:12, the official splits, and as you've rightly pointed out, Mark, that is quite crisp running.
3 minutes and 1 second per kilometer. Just noticing from our monitors here that Reed Coulsett is now running by himself. John Mason has dropped off. So Reed Coulsett is on his own now as he tries to turn in a strong marathon performance here at Ottawa Race Weekend. We'll get you a shot of Reed Coulsett in a few minutes, in the next few minutes, but there he is.
That's very tough for Reed. John has lasted only 35 minutes before he's had to step off the road, the personal pacemaker for Reed Coulsett. And, you know, I mean, great for him to commit himself to this for Reed. I know that Reed was certainly hoping that John Mason would help him out through to about halfway in roughly 67 minutes. Well, he's hardly made 50% of that, and maybe that marathon is still in the legs of John Mason. That Rotterdam run some 5 or 6 weeks ago. You know, they say it takes 2 or 3 weeks to shake out the fatigue of a marathon from your legs, and actually quite a lot longer than that, 6 to 8 weeks, before you can really get back into your training properly. So I think John Mason I saw him grimacing about 5 minutes ago. I thought he looked like he was grimacing, and clearly he must have had a quick word with Reed, and I suspect the word "sorry mate, that's the best I can do," or the sentence something like that was what would have been uttered. But Reed here has got a mountain to climb, 3/4 of the race mark on his own now.
Probably not sorry mate, though.
No, sorry, that's a bit British. What would you say? Fella?
Pal, buddy. Reed Coulsett carrying that bottle with him over the last few hundred meters there. He's just tossed it aside. And I noticed him looking at his watch a lot as he's running, wiping his face. He seems, you know, he doesn't seem entirely comfortable at this point. He's not settled into that sort of comfortable zone.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. The only thing is, I guess, is that for the first 35 minutes or so, however long John Mason lasted, Reed was running at John's tempo, and I didn't look comfortable at all for my money, and maybe he'll ease back on the throttle a little bit now and conserve energy and make sure that he finishes the race in reasonable order. You know, he's been up in Boulder, Colorado with the family, as you mentioned, for 3 or 4 months. They drove across there with the children. He said that they were offered a house by a friend of a friend at a very, very good rate, and they planned to go originally for some 4 to 6 weeks, and when they got the offer of the house, they adjusted things and stayed up there for several months. So he's had a really good period there. He is in good shape, and you know, I don't think Reed would talk rubbish. If he wasn't in good shape, I think he'd be honest about it. And Reed said, yeah, no, he's really happy with where he's at in training. So let's see how it unfolds. It'll be fascinating to see if he can hold it together. But this will be a very big test of character.
The lead men are running through Tunney's pasture now on their way to the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. This is a conglomerate of government office buildings in the west end of Ottawa, with some open space and an area that is not very busy on weekends, so it's not difficult to shut down the roads there and have the elite runners pass through. That looks like they've just passed the 13K marker, and so they maintain the pace of about 3 minutes and 1 second per kilometer. And this is an area where I run quite often, actually. This is a great place to train because the roads are very quiet early in the morning or on the weekends. Given that it's a government space, you can see the misters, the water misters that are on the course. Those will be helpful to runners, especially the amateur athletes later in the race who are running in the heat and sunshine as it warms up on this Sunday morning in Ottawa. The runner's making another turn now, and they will soon be on the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. And they're going to run west on the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway all the way out to Island Park, and then loop around and start heading back towards the downtown before they cross over into Quebec on a slightly different route than would be normal because that Chaudière crossing has been closed due to the flooding in Ottawa. There's a look at the lead women as they continue. When we last checked, their pace was about 3 minutes 25 seconds per kilometer, and that group included Risper Chebet, Tigist Gurma, Shuko Gumeno.
They were at 34.16 officially at 10k mark. That puts them on schedule for a 2:24.30 finish time. I'm sure they will crank it up a little bit in the second half and in the closing stages to go under 2:24, assuming this middle section of the race stays the same. I counted 6 ladies in this group. Hard to pick them out, but you can see Ganemo there to the second to right in the white vest, looking pretty comfortable, and she's been the athlete to the fore for the most part throughout the race. The athlete who won Vienna back in 2016 and 2:24. In fact, she's had 3 big wins in her career: Vienna in 2016, Ljubljana in 2017, and then Mumbai back in 2016 as well, in January 2016. I was at that race, and Mumbai is always warm and humid, indeed very, very humid conditions, although it's about the best they can get in their entire 12-month calendar is the January temperatures, but it's always around 25-27 degrees in the latter stage of the race in Mumbai, which tells me that Ganemo handles humidity and heat pretty well. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes here, the 23-year-old. She's already run 11 marathons and she's only 23, and 8 of those have been under 2 hours 30, so she's really consistent, is Ganemo, and she'll be enjoying this good pacemaking role being carried out by Kedir Namo and Uwajanetsa of Rwanda there, who's to the right of picture.
Sunshine in Ottawa now at the Ottawa Marathon. It was overcast at the start, and now the temperature will be warming up a little bit as it gets brighter. It's now 17 degrees. We're expecting it to reach as high as 18 or 19 by the time the elite race is over. High temperature today is about 21, so that's going to be a factor for the thousands of amateur runners who are part of this event. The marathon is now 42 minutes, almost 43 minutes old. You get a good look at Reed Coolset, who's now completed more than 13 kilometers of the race as well. He's running through Tunney's pasture alongside some of the government office buildings there, and you can see the sweat on Reed Coolset.
Yeah, and he's puffing, he's blowing hard, Reed. And when you think he's been out there, Mark, for 43 minutes, that's all. He's not much more than 1/3 of the race distance done, and he looks to me like he's working hard. He keeps brushing the water off his face, out of his eyes. It's a combination of sweat, I think, and what we've seen him pouring over his head, checking his watch roughly every minute, it seems. I just hope he can hold this together, Reed. It's going to be a very, very tough day at the office, and if he comes home inside 2:15 in these conditions, having run 2/3 of the race on his own, it will be mighty impressive.
That is the challenge, having to run by himself. There is, at an event like this, there are several elite runners, but the field is not deep enough that you're going to have 6 or 7 runners coming in at 2:10, 6 or 7 runners coming in at 2:11, 6 or 7 runners coming in at 2:12. There's the elite group that's way out in front, and then there's Reed Coolset, basically.
Yeah, no, and that is the problem. The only thing that, these athletes have in their favour, and it applies to Reid in particular, who's been training so hard up in Boulder, is that when you're in the weeks and months leading up to a marathon, you're in a constant state of fatigue. It's easy to forget that every morning you get up, you're already tired from the previous day's training. You pump in another 20 or 30k on that day of running, and you go to bed very tired that night. You wake up the next morning tired, and so that goes on week after week. And it's that conditioning, getting adjusted and used to that fatigue level, that makes you hard, makes you tough and strong. And then you freshen up in the last couple of weeks before a marathon. You ease right back in the volume of training you're doing, and that freshness and energy comes through in bucket loads. So you should be standing on the start line of a marathon pretty much perfectly prepared and ready.
Let's watch the elite men here for a few moments, because they're now at 45 minutes and they should soon be crossing the 15K timing mat, and we'll be able to see their split time at 15 kilometers. There it is. So they've just crossed 15 kilometers in 45:12. So they picked up the pace a bit. They're averaging now almost exactly 3 minutes per kilometer, or just under. And you can see there's some of them stopping and bending down to pick up nutrition there as they've just crossed. They're not those bottles were not on tables for them. They, for whatever reason, were on the ground there. That's unusual.
That is
you don't
really
see that
weird.
very often.
Well, I've got my own marathon back in the UK, Mark, and bizarrely, one of the things that, as we say in Britain, goes walkies, goes missing overnight are tables. There are some people who are sad enough to go out there in vehicles and steal tables. And I don't know if that's what's happened there. I don't want to make accusations, but the tables appear to have just gone, and the bottles were literally standing on the road surface. That's very tough for these guys, and I suspect the majority of them didn't get their bottle.
Looked like quite a few of them paused and reached down, and that's not something you want to do when you're in a rhythm. Now, of course, at this stage of the race with a large group of runners, you can regroup and you have time to catch up with everybody again, and everybody's sort of sharing the load right now. Anyway, nobody has broken away. They're all sticking with that group of pace setters. But we can tell you that in that group of runners who crossed in 45:12 at 15 kilometers, Barakuma, as well Adugna Tekele, Albert Corrier, Martin Koske, Sadat Ayana, and Gaitu Faleke. So those are just some of the runners who have made it to 15 kilometers in just over 45 minutes.
You can see to the left of picture there, Kuma holding his bottle. He did get his bottle at that drink station. He's the guy who I think is a supreme all-round racer, and ran his personal best in April last year in Rotterdam, 2:05:50. He's the second quickest in the race. There he is in the red shorts to left of picture. And Kuma looks very comfortable. He's right up alongside Corrier and Sang, the pacemakers, and I saw him gesturing to a couple of them then, and you can see he's running with his bottle in his hand. He's just taking his time. There's nothing wrong with that. Those bottles are not full, otherwise they'd be quite heavy, but there's just enough in it for him to get enough sustenance, and it's smart to just keep running with it, take a sip every 20 or 30 seconds when you feel like it, and then throw it aside in your own time. And it is tough for some of these fellas, Mark, that they did not get their drinks at that 15k station, because on a day like this, every drink station matters, and the personal drinks that you gather up each 5k really do give you reinforcement. The only good news is that there is water on the course for everybody, for the masses, the thousands behind, every 3 kilometers. So these fellas can make use of that if they want. Water every 3k.
So there you see the data from the chip timing mats at 45 minutes and 12 seconds. Kogo, Sang, and Corrier, those first 3 runners you see there, all Kenyans, are pace setters in this race. And so we don't expect them to be factors at 42.2K. But Barakuma and Adugna Tekele are among the leaders. We have, let's see, we have a group of about 8 men who crossed 15 kilometers, in addition to the 3 pace setters, 8 others who crossed 15 kilometers in either 45:12 or 45:13. So that's where things stand right now.
Yeah, and the pacemakers, while they are taking on the burden, Mark, as their job, Kogo, Sang, and Corrier, they may carry on and finish the race. So that pack of 11 moving really well at about 2:07 tempo.
Reed Coulsett, meanwhile, crossed 15 kilometers in 48 minutes and 1 second. So he is averaging 3 minutes and 10 seconds per kilometer. And John Mason, who had been pacing Reed Coulsett before that, was a minute behind him, minute 4 seconds behind him at 15 kilometers. So he's dropped off quite a bit, but is continuing to run, at least for now.
That's 48:01 for Reed at 15K equates to exactly 2 hours 15 minutes. So he's a little bit shy of the pace he wanted, but that's hardly surprising, as I suspect he's dialed it back a little bit, Mark, over the last 15 minutes since he lost John Mason, and is trying to hold it together to come home in a respectable time. I will be very interested to see whether or not, if Reed starts slipping back a long way out of the target zone, he bothers to finish the race, because it's a tough one. If you drop out before about 3/4 distance, your legs haven't got into that real red zone where you damage your legs badly and take a long time to recover. If you drop out before 30K, then you can rally and come back for a race another day. But that's not in Reed's nature. I don't expect him to do it. But if he starts running and heading for what is a slow time and has a really torrid time in the second half, he might opt for that.
I should mention that Reed Coulsett is actually not technically the lead Canadian male at this point. Berhanu de Geifa is actually about 30 seconds, or was about 30 seconds ahead of Reed Coulsett at the 15-kilometer mark. So there's Reed Coulsett again taking on some more nutrition. He's traveling on the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, but he is not the top Canadian at this point. It is Berhanu de Geifa, who is running with an American, Kia Dandana, and they crossed in 47:29 at 15 kilometers. Reed Coulsett was 48:01.
Well, Berhanu de Geifa was always down as one of those Canadians who could challenge Reed Coulsett today. Indeed, he was 11th in Daegu back in April, and the 7th of April he ran a 2:14.50. De Geifa. I'm a little surprised to see him running today, because, you know, here you are, 7 weeks later, to be running another marathon. That is not a lot of time in which to recover. So that'll be another thing we have to keep an eye on, is how De Geifa copes with the second half, running on what's surely a slightly tired legs from Daegu.
The women have now crossed 15 kilometers. You can see they've just run through the area where they've had to reach down and pick up their bottles off the ground, perhaps because of some missing tables. And the women crossed 15 kilometers in 51 minutes and 30 seconds, some of them in 51:31, others in 51:32, but that puts them all at about 3 minutes and 27 seconds per kilometer. So that's the pace for the women through 15K.
Yeah, 51:30 for the ladies, puts them on schedule for just inside 2:25. So they're holding their tempo nicely. And trusting the pacemakers, and they have to do that. It's the job of these pacemakers. Namo there, out in front, as he has been for the whole race, and to the right of picture, the other big fella, Uwa Janesa, and Kariankai. Kariankai, it is in fact to the right. You've got to trust them to do their job. The ladies put themselves in their hands, and then when those pacemakers drop out, if they drop out, because of course male pacemakers like that can cruise to the finish line with the ladies all the way. And actually, if you look at the world record for women, 2:15 by Paula Radcliffe, which is a great men's time back in 2003, she had a couple of Kenyan pacemakers with her in London all the way to the finish line.
And that's touched off debates as well, because for a time there was talk of not counting a world record for the women unless they were running alone. If they were running with men, meaning they could have male pace setters, there was talk of actually not counting those records, right? because they weren't out there setting the pace on their own.
That would have been harsh, because for men's races they can get pacemakers for 30 kilometers or further. In women's marathon running, very, very hard to find female pacemakers of that caliber, so they have to rely upon male pacemakers. So to get the same amount of help, they really have to resort to getting male pacemakers out there on the road.
Among the lead women, we can tell you Gurma, Gemeno, Temesgen, Chebet, Moges, Desalikin, and others. They're several in that group. Let's see, there are 8 women. Yeah, 8 women who crossed in around 51 and a half minutes at 15 kilometers. And again, we can tell you that the elite men are now at about 18 kilometers into the race. They're soon going to be at the halfway point in the next few minutes. And all right, there's the list of the lead women after 15 kilometers.
Yeah, and that puts them on schedule, Mark, for just inside 2:25. Pretty good running on a day like this. You know, I said earlier, I think the conditions are sort of 8 out of 10 conditions. Ironically, I think they would have preferred last night's conditions, you know, where it was before the rain came on very heavily. Last night it was much cooler, it was overcast, and that would have been pretty much ideal. It was, what was it, around 12 degrees, I think, last night? Whereas now, these conditions are dropping down towards 7 out of 10, if I'm going to put it in school book marking terms, because it's warm, the humidity is climbing, the sunlight is not really what these athletes wanted, even if it makes for great pictures.
I think we've been able to catch up with Berhanu de Gefa now, who is the lead Canadian male. So we might be able to show you some pictures of Berhanu de Gefa in the next few minutes. So Reed Coolset is still out there on the course, and we're going to be keeping an eye on him. But Berhanu, there he is. Berhanu de Gefa is with a group of a couple of other runners. That's him on the left of picture. And he is the top Canadian male in the Ottawa Marathon.
Kipkoech Kirui in the blue there at the front of that little pack. De Gefa on the far side. And in fact, no, that's De Gefa on the left, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the blue. But in the middle there, Kirui was tasked with going out at 2:10 tempo. Ironically, his personal best is only 2:21, but that was at altitude a few years back, the 28-year-old Kirui, and he looks to be doing a good job at the moment. The Kenyan in the centre of that trio.
And the other runner there is Kia Dendena. So that's the group of 3 that are running together: Kirui, De Gefa, and Dendena. And at 15 kilometers, they were all in the range of 3 minutes 9 seconds per kilometer.
Yeah, Dendena is a 2:12 fella. A couple of years ago, he ran 2:12.56, the 30-year-old American. So that's good company for Berhanu de Gefa. That's a nice little pairing, assuming that Kirui drops away eventually, the pacemaker helping that pair. Then maybe they will be able to work together, and that makes a big difference in the second half of a marathon when the fatigue is kicking in. Makes a huge difference if you've got somebody alongside you and you can share that burden of holding the tempo.
You can see the lead men are on the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. They're heading back towards downtown Ottawa. They're soon going to cross over into Quebec, passing through a water station now that's there mostly for the amateur runners. And that is a group of men who are now just past 19 kilometers in this race, maintaining that pace of just over 3 minutes per kilometer. They did pick it up a little bit over the last couple of kilometers. And they've just crossed Booth Street in close to downtown Ottawa. That's where they would normally have turned to cross over onto the Quebec side. That's where the Chaudière crossing is, but that bridge is closed because of the high water levels of the Ottawa River this year. So instead, they're going to continue on the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, and they're going to cross the Portage Bridge, and we will see them cross that bridge soon. And the course is slightly altered. Most of the course remains the same as normal, but the crossing into Quebec is a little bit different because of the circumstances involving the flooding. So that group has passed in front of the War Museum and the Holocaust Memorial in Ottawa, and they will soon be crossing over into Quebec. Here's a quick look at them from a different vantage point as they're approaching. You can see the lead vehicle making that turn.
That's a tightly bunched men's pack, Mark. And the pacemaker's doing a great job. I mean, Kogo, Sang and Courier have been at the front across the, spread across the group at the front throughout since the gun, and the runners behind them are packed pretty closely. That tells me that, if anything, the guys behind them are maybe holding back a little bit. And it'll be very interesting if a couple of these pacemakers step aside. If somebody from that pack past halfway, hits their straps and puts in a little surge and ups the tempo. They're moving well. They're at a pace of just around a projected pace of around 2:07, just outside 2:07 for a finishing time. But I just get the impression there's 2 or 3 guys in that group who are looking very comfortable, running within themselves at the moment.
You can see they're crossing the Portage Bridge now, and they'll soon hit 20 kilometers in the Ottawa Marathon, and we expect that to happen in the next 45 seconds or so as they maintain this 3 minutes per kilometer pace. Think about that for a minute. 20 kilometers in roughly an hour. It's blistering pace, impossible pace for most runners, but achievable for these runners who are going to be traveling the full marathon distance today. And then they'll be at the halfway point, and we'll be able to get a reading on how things are shaping up.
Well, if they were to maintain that 2:07 tempo, they need to get to 20k in about 60 minutes 10 seconds, 60 minutes 15 seconds. We're on pretty much on that right now mark, so they should be passing through 20k, the men to the left there of your picture, any second.
Yeah. I didn't see a banner for 20k yet. I don't know if they've passed it already, or if they're just about to, or if perhaps there isn't a banner just because of the circumstances of the route change. Perhaps the banner is not there, and because of these adjustments to the course, we haven't got a banner on the course for that. We'll see. But there is a timing mat at 21.1k, so we will, if we don't get a sense of where they are at 20k, within another couple of minutes, we're going to see them cross the halfway point in the race.
Well, they've just I've just got a message from the lead vehicle that they went through that 20th kilometre with a 2:59. The actual split for 20k hasn't come up yet, and we must remember, Mark, too, that the drink station for these elite athletes that would normally be at 20k is at 21k today, and it is that much more significant to all the elite men and women because that 15k drink station was a little bit awry. It was, you know, the water bottles that we saw were lying on the road surface. There were no tables. It didn't look like there were too many volunteers there either, because ideally they'd have been handing them out to the athletes. So quite a few of this lead pack of men, and I think the ladies as well, didn't get their 15k drinks. So it's far more important, very important, that they get their drinks at this 21k station, drink station they'll be coming to any second.
Yeah, just over an hour and 2 minutes now into this race, and so within the next minute or so, we should be able to see where they stand at the halfway point. We're going to go to the start of the kids marathon now in just the next minute or the finish of the kids marathon. It started just a few minutes ago, so in just a second, in fact just 2.5 minutes ago, the kids marathon started. These are young athletes who prepare in the weeks leading up to Ottawa race weekend. There's a shot of the lead runners in the kids marathon. Look at them sprinting. So for weeks leading up to this event, they run a kilometer at a time or do other units of exercise that qualify them to be part of this. They do 41 total units, a kilometer of running or something else, and then they run 1.2 kilometers today, and here is the winner of the kids marathon coming across the finish line at Ottawa race weekend. And very soon we're going to see hundreds and hundreds of others runners coming in behind them.
At about 3:05, that's pretty crisp. That is good to see.
That's a good time for 1 kilometer. And again, that's the pace that the elite men are running over and over again over the course of this event.
And the first young lady there, I think about 3:20. And they're pouring through now in around 3.5 minutes. That is good running. It's a wonderful idea too. I love that. You know,
it's a great way to get kids
41K.
involved. Yep, they cross the same finish line as every other runner at Ottawa race weekend. Everybody from the 2K to the marathon, and they get a medal for participating and for all of the running that they've done leading up to this weekend. And they get to be runners. They get to wear the bib. They get to get the T-shirt. They get to have that whole running experience, and let's hope that it leads to a lifetime of running and fitness for these young individuals who are part of Ottawa Race Weekend. Great to see that. So the top men have now passed the halfway point in the race, and they did so in 1 hour and 3 minutes and 35 seconds. So that's about 3:04 per kilometer. So as of the halfway point, Tim, they've slowed down a tiny bit, down to 3:04 per kilometer.
Yeah, 3:04, still, sub 2:10 territory, so they are still moving along really well. And I think what we've got to remember, Mark, is that, these fellas getting to halfway in 63:35 officially has just come through, is very good. They're still on, for intents and purposes, pretty much 2:07 tempo, and that is with the pacemakers. And fairly commonly in major road races, you see the athletes who are running behind the pacemakers while they're being brought through to halfway at a good tempo. Once the pacemakers drop out, it's almost like there's a release of energy and they cut loose, and you quite often see an acceleration, not only for the few minutes after the pacemakers drop out, but actually for the second half of the race when the pacemakers have gone. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see negative splits here today. I think that's a really good, sensible tempo the men have run there for halfway. 63:35, nothing too crazy in these conditions. We know it's warm, it's going to get a little bit more humid in this next hour or so. So, it'll be fascinating to see if they can run negative splits, a quicker second half.
Right now you're looking at the lead women, and they are about to cross the Portage Bridge. They're making the turn now, being led by the pace setters there. And so they're about to travel the same path that the men have done. They're at about 19.2 kilometers, give or take, right now. They'll soon be crossing 20 kilometers, and we'll get a sense of how they are doing. Again, the lead men crossing the halfway point in 1 hour, 3 minutes, 35 seconds, which of course would put them on pace for 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 10 seconds. We'll see where the women are at the halfway point. Gurma, Gameno, Temesgen, Chebet, and Moges among those who are in the elite women's race and leading the way for the women.
Yeah, Gurma will be an interesting athlete. Tigist Gurma, the 25-year-old, she ran this great personal best in December, 2:26 to win in Guangzhou in China. She's coached by a very, very well-known Ethiopian coach back in Addis, Haji Adilo, who has so much experience. But on the 9th of December, that's personal best 2:26. And if you win a race, well, who knows what more you've got to produce. So I shall be watching Gurma with a lot of interest. Even though there's 3 or 4 athletes in the race who are quicker than her on paper, recent form is a very, very important indicator.
While we're watching the elite women and also the lead men in this race, there are still many young runners who are crossing the finish line of the kids marathon. Again, they ran 41 kilometers in advance of this weekend and are running the final 1.2 kilometers today to complete a total distance of 42.2 kilometers and receiving their medals at the finish line. Tim Hutchings and I are joined by elite Canadian runner Tanya Jones, who will be part of our coverage. And Tanya, it's a nice day in Ottawa. It's great to have you as part of our team today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome back to Ottawa. You've had some great runs here, of course, but it is also a little bit on the warm side today, I think, for these runners.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, the start time, it was 16 degrees already. It feels very humid. But it was overcast, and we're seeing, as you can see behind us, it's starting to show some sunshine, definitely cleared up, so I think that's really going to, the runners will feel that heat.
Yeah. How do you tend to approach a marathon when it comes to the first half versus the second half? Because we're now at the halfway point for many of these runners.
Right. Well, so much of the second half and your success in the second half will be set up by what you did in the first half. So I think in light of the temperature and potential humidity, hopefully the group, all of the runners were hydrating well and taking that into consideration. So if they've taken on glucose and they've done their hydration at halfway, then you could say the race really begins to take shape.
Would you say though that it makes it doubly tough for a lot of these Canadian athletes because they haven't had a lot of time to train in the warmth, to train certainly in humidity, and if you were in that situation and let's say an hour into the race, the humidity was climbing, what sort of adjustments would you make mentally and therefore to change your approach for the second half?
I think pace is a big factor, so you'd have to be looking at checking a number of factors, how you feel, are you comfortable at the pace you're at, anticipating that it could be getting a lot warmer, do you take on more fluids, do you take on, or do you look at your pace and maybe start to compensate with a slight adjustment, having maybe give up that goal time or slow down a little bit to accommodate that.
There you see the lead men, and again the numbers for them at the halfway point of the marathon. They're more than 6 minutes past that point now, and so in the next 7-8 minutes we should see them approaching 25 kilometers. But Sang, Kogo, and Korir will remind you, those three Kenyans at the front of the pack, those are the pace setters who may or may not drop off at a certain point. We'll see whether they stay in the race or they just do the prescribed distance that they've been hired to run and then back away. But we'll keep an eye on who else is in that group. There are the lead women as well.
We're starting to open up a little bit.
Yeah, that really was bunched together for the longest time, and now it is opening up a little bit.
Well, both races are, they've gone through halfway, the men, and psychologically you're kind of on a downhill slope from this point on, and whether or not the pacemakers stay there for quite a few more kilometers or not, the athletes who are definitely racing the full distance, I think, go through a slight psychological change. And Kuma in the red shorts there has been the most prominent of the definite racers. He's kept to one side the whole time. Once or twice he's pulled up alongside or even got his nose in front of the pacemakers. So he is impressive, Abira Kuma, the 28-year-old. He's run 45 minutes for 10 miles mark. That puts him in a very select group. He's done 10 marathons. He averages very, very fast times. And in fact, last year he was fifth in Lake Biwa, a Japanese marathon in 2:09 back in March. And he was so frustrated. 35 days later, he went to Rotterdam. And that's normally much too soon after a marathon to race again. But he went to Rotterdam and he produced this incredible personal best of 2:05.50. So he is a man who is absolutely nailing it in this current sort of annual cycle of racing, and Kuma for me looks the most likely.
On the women's side, we expect them to be reaching the halfway point in the race very soon, so we'll be watching to see what the split times are for the women as they cross the halfway point now. They're an hour and 12 minutes into the race, and they should be getting there very shortly. It should be any second now that they cross the timing mats at the halfway point, and that'll give us an indication of what kind of pace they're on. But we expect it'll be something in the range of 2:25, Tim.
Yeah, no, that's right. And in fact, the athlete there in green, who's very much to the fore left of picture, is Nick Spector. He's an American who has run 2:22 already this year. That is his personal best, 2:22.44. And that's why he's sort of fed off the ladies group. I was mentioning this earlier, how some great national standard runners can stay with the leading women's pack because they know they're going to be running at 2:23, 2:24 pace. Make use of them almost as a massive pacemaking group for the first half, and then perhaps readjust things and move on. And interesting, isn't it, that the ladies are just about approaching halfway, and Spector has now separated himself from the group. There he is, top left of picture, and he's beginning to push on. I suspect he feels that halfway split for him and the rest of the ladies, they're not quite, they are 72.27, excuse me. So he is definitely going to run negative splits.
So just under 2:25 pace at an hour, 12 minutes and 27 seconds, 28 seconds for some of the runners. A group of 8 women who are still leading the Ottawa Marathon. And it'll be interesting when the men get to 25K, which is going to be in the next couple minutes. Be interesting to see how many of that group are still there together, because it seems to have thinned out slightly. I think there might be 1 or 2 runners who have dropped off. We'll see. At the halfway point, there were 11 runners, including the 3 pace setters who were all together. And we'll see if it's still 11 runners. And it's hard to count.
I think it was at the halfway. I counted 11 guys went through in 63:35.
And I'm just looking at that group now, and I don't. It might be down to 9 or 10, but it's hard to judge. They're all bunched together so closely.
Tanya, we saw the ladies just now having some problems at a drink station, and I do sometimes wonder why the tables at drink stations aren't spread out further. They tend to be bunched in a little strip of tables close together. I don't know why they don't put them sort of 20 or 30 yards apart, and then it would be so much easier to head for table 3 or head for table 4. Instead, there's rather a chaotic drinks table just there now, but that is the way it's done in major marathons. Maybe it's within the rules. Did you practice that during a marathon, as grabbing drinks in training? Did you practice grabbing bottles at speed?
Definitely. That's definitely an important part. Like the triathlon, and where you have transitions,
Right.
Every detail in a marathon may play a role. So I think, to your point, the value of being quick, smooth, but also anticipating possible challenges, right? So maybe there's no table and you're reaching down to grab water off the ground.
That was a first, mind you. I've never seen that before.
And you can see the chaos, and you have to be ready for that, and anticipating that anything can happen out on the race day.
The men will soon be at 25 kilometers, so we'll keep an eye on that. Is it a psychological barrier when you cross the halfway point, Tanya? Does your mindset change at that point in the race?
Not so much a barrier, but definitely a transition point. In my mind, it was always okay, I've made it halfway. I've done everything right to this point, and time to reassess and determine what's my next big milestone, which is, for some people, could be like 30K, 32 when you have 10K to go. But definitely halfway is a point where you do a check on how am I feeling, who am I with, have I taken enough hydration on. You can recalibrate at that point, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the men sort of splitting up as they pass those tables where they're getting nutrition, splitting up, and then they'll bunch together once again. The men are at the 25-kilometer mark now, and just under 1 hour, 16 minutes. Most of them crossing in either 1:15:56 or 1:15:57. That's 3 minutes and 6 seconds per kilometer.
Yeah, 1:15:56 mark puts them on schedule for just inside 2:08. They're almost exactly on 2 hours 8-minute tempo. So this middle section of the race has been a settling down after what was a very healthy, quite aggressive start, I suppose, to this 45th Ottawa Marathon. But the pacemakers will become less of a factor, I suspect, now that they're moving into, soon they'll be moving into the final third of the race, and then we'll see the racing actually unfold. And as I say that, so Kuma in the red shorts, still drinking away from that bottle. He takes his time with his drinks, Kuma. It's good to see. He eases to the front.
And so it's a group of 9 runners who crossed in an hour and 15 minutes and 56, or an hour and 15 minutes and 57 seconds. So from 11 runners that were part of the group at the halfway point, now 3.9 kilometers later, it's down to 9 runners, including those 3 pace setters. So 2 of them have dropped off the back a little bit and are going a little bit slower. And so the winner is likely to emerge from this lead group of 9 runners plus the 3 pace setters. And they will soon be making a turn. They're on Laurier Avenue in Gatineau, in the Hull district of Gatineau, and they'll soon pass in front of the Canadian Museum of History. And then they will make a turn onto the Alexandra Bridge and cross back over the Ottawa River into the province of Ontario, and then make a turn into Rockcliffe, where they will run for a while before heading back towards downtown Ottawa. There's the Museum of History on the left of your screen, designed by architect Douglas Cardinal. Fantastic building with terrific views of downtown Ottawa. And so as they pass in front of this, they will soon be making a right-hand turn onto the bridge.
This is quite a scenic course. I'm quite impressed at how much of Ottawa and the area this new course, the new to me. When we ran the marathon, we were often doing loops around Dow's Lake.
Right.
On the Ontario
the canal,
side.
yeah.
And that was lovely. I really enjoyed that race, but this is exciting to be able to see and cover the entire area.
Yeah.
Presumably it's grown a bit since then.
True.
Yeah, you can see the men making that turn now from Laurier in Gatineau onto the Alexandra Bridge, the first bridge that was constructed to cross the Ottawa River and connect Ottawa to Gatineau, or as it was then known, Hull. And lots of sunshine now out on the course. So this group of 9 runners now making its way up the bridge. There is a bit of an incline here. Tim, you mentioned how this is largely a flat course, but this is an area that I've run many times. You do have to climb to get onto the Alexandra Bridge. It's not a level crossing. So the runners have done that. They've covered that distance very quickly. They're now on the bridge, and you can see the steel structure of the Alexandra Bridge. They'll have a beautiful view, if they care to partake in it, of the Parliament buildings in downtown Ottawa as they cross this bridge. They're running back towards Ottawa. You can see Parliament Hill and the bluff behind the hill. Very, very picturesque setting. You get to see all of downtown Ottawa, but I suspect sightseeing is not on the minds of these runners at the front of the pack in the men's marathon.
Kogo, they're doing a fabulous job, as he has done throughout the race, Mark. You know, he was tasked with going out at 2:06 tempo. They went through halfway in 63.5 minutes, so almost spot on by the 33-year-old who's taken on a lot of the burden. He was 6th here in 2:11.55. That was his personal best. He's a regular racer in North America. He's done so many races in the USA, and indeed he's a very, very high caliber athlete over 10 miles. He's run 45 and just inside 46 minutes for 10 miles back in 2013. He's the perfect pacemaker, really. You want guys who specialize at 10 miles and half marathon, and that's what Kogo is. That's his hot zone.
Looks like that group has thinned out a little further. It seems like there's might be down to 7 or 8 runners now from 9. And that may be because one of the pace setters has dropped out, but we'll see.
I think 2 of them are gone. I think Sang and Correa have both gone. We've only got Kogo there.
Yeah. We should mention that De Geefa, the top Canadian in the race right now, Berhanu De Geefa, reached 25 kilometers in 1 hour and 19 minutes and 25 seconds.
And I think this is your top female, is that top Canadian?
Yeah. So is it Dana Pidereski that's the top Canadian woman at this point? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she got to the halfway point in 1 hour, 15 minutes and 37 seconds. So there's Dana Pidereski. And so she is on pace for just over 2 hours and 31 minutes. And Rachel Hanna reached the halfway point in 1 hour, 17 minutes, 42 seconds. Krista Duchesne, 1 hour, 18 minutes and 5 seconds. So those are the top 3 Canadian women, but that's the top Canadian woman in your picture now, Dana Pidereski, 32-year-old, whose personal best is 2:36. So she's on pace to take a couple of minutes off of that at least. That'd be quite a strong performance for Dana Pidereski.
That's great, yeah. And it looks like she has a couple pacemakers with her here as well. What do you think?
Yeah.
Perhaps. Very comfortable.
Yeah, it's hard to know whether they're pacing her or whether she's just found a couple of other runners who are aiming for a similar time, right? Yeah. And sometimes that can happen just fortuitously, that you find someone else on the course who's running at the same pace as you and you settle into a rhythm together.
I think that's why having larger races in Canada like Ottawa, some of the Toronto races are so important for developing Canadian runners. When you have some bigger sized events, then it gives particularly the women the opportunity to actually run with more people and be able to feed and work with people, men. Whereas smaller races, you can often be on your own.
Well, in the black vest there, leading Dana Pidereski is Chris Balestrini. Now, he raced well in the 10K last night. I think he finished in 6th or 7th place. He's a former triathlete. He said he was really happy. I saw him late last night. He said he was really happy with his run, and it was pretty impressive to run a 10K the night before, coming out and pacing a marathon. I mean, he's been out on the road now for 1 hour and 24 minutes and dragging Dana along. He's going quicker than was expected too, because he told me that he was going to go out and around 2:45 tempo, but clearly Dana, having gone through halfway in 1:15:37, is on schedule for what, a 2:31, 2:32 clocking. That would be supreme. I mean, her PR, Dana, is 2:36, so she could be heading for a 3 or 4 minute PB.
Yeah. Going very well so far for Dana Pidereski, and now you can see on the left of your screen the lead the lead men rather, and on the right the lead women. And it does look like that group of lead men has thinned out quite a bit, so we'll have a sense of that when they get to 30 kilometers. They're approaching 28 kilometers now in the men's race, and they are traveling on Sussex Drive in just east of downtown Ottawa, and we'll soon see them passing the 30K point. There's the 28K marker in the background, so they've just passed 28 kilometers, the top men. And it looks like it's down to the pace setter Kogo and perhaps 6 other runners, Tim.
That's right. Faleke there to the right of the group, the tallest of them all, is on paper the fastest man in the field. Back in 2012, remember, he ran that 2:04 clocking, 2:04.50 in Rotterdam. And actually 8 times he's run under 2:10, so he's pretty consistent. But as I said earlier, he needs a good race. He actually hasn't had a big performance for a couple of years now, Faleke, and this might be the one. This is the one that gets him back on track. He looks strong, doesn't he, in that all-black strip to the right of picture. And keeping very close contact with Kogo, who's doing such a fabulous job. Of course, what we don't know, we're talking about Kogo as a pacemaker, but he may carry on.
Sure.
They have that option here.
Yeah, we've seen that before. I think one of the pace setters finished 2nd or 3rd in the marathon a couple of years ago. So it can happen. It is at the pace setter's discretion whether or not he stays in the race. And you never know until they get to the point where they've been paid to run to, and they make the decision then whether they stay in the race and go after prize money in addition to what they've been paid to set the pace. You can see Albert Carrier is in the mix there as well among the lead men. It looks like it is a group of 6 in addition to the pace setter Julius Kogo. Getting a look at them as they run past one of our fixed camera points here, and this will give us a chance to see who's in the mix in the men's marathon. Yeah,
7 men.
Yeah, total of 7 men, including the pace setter Kogo. So it has dropped down from 11 in that group earlier on in the race.
The ladies at 25K, that split has just come through, 1:26.30 at 25K. And the pack is, 7 strong. So it's still a really good, healthy pack in that women's contest.
Yeah. Tigis Gurma is in that group. Temesgen, Chebet, Gameno, Mogus, Desalin, Niraru. All of those runners in the elite women's field at the front of the pack. And they're past 25 kilometers now.
And they're on schedule. Mark, just checking that 25K split, 1:26.30. Puts them on schedule pretty much for 2:25, high 2:25s. So they are moving well. And I think, we were hoping that maybe they'd go down there and even approach the course record in the 2:22, 2:24 range. But actually, conditions are not ideal out there. There's a bit of breeze around. It's humid nonetheless. Quite a warm morning. So I think they're making a really good job of it, the ladies, of a pack of them producing quick times here today. It'll be interesting to see how it hangs together through the final quarter.
Actually feels a little bit cooler at the finish line at the moment. Just there's been a bit of a breeze lately, and this is the coolest the air temperature has felt since the race has started, despite the fact that the sun has come out a little bit. So there's a really good look at Girma at the front of the pack for the women. They continue to be on the Gatineau side.
Yeah, the pacemaker Namo has been there throughout. He was the guy who was supposed to take them out at 2:23 tempo. The Ethiopian 32-year-old, very, very experienced, if not a top-notch racer himself in male terms. And of course, these pacemakers get a few bucks for their troubles, and rightly so. They're doing a great job in both races.
I've just been told by Timothy Walker that race officials are trying to determine what happened to those tables that would normally have held the elite runners' nutrition, their bottles. As you saw, just past just past 20K.
Was it the 15K?
The 15K, yeah, just past
virtual
15K.
Tables, they were virtual tables.
That's right. The water bottles, the energy bottles, were all on the ground, and I suspect, Tim, that you're right, that somebody came out and took them.
Well, it happened in my marathon back in the UK a few years back. The guys went around that evening to pick up all the equipment, and it was actually after the race, but nonetheless, about 10 or 15 tables disappeared.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
But to these racers, they have to get the job done.
Yep.
They picked up the water wherever it was and just keep moving.
What I'm puzzled at is that they also appeared to, whoever took the tables appeared to have stolen the volunteers for that drink station as well, because there was nobody standing there with a drink station. It's just a bunch of bottles on the road.
Well, I think there was one or two people there, and it's hard, what do you do in that circumstance, right? Because you can't pick up one
You can't favoritize, I know.
Yeah, you can't pick up one runner's nutrition. You can't have a whole bunch of them. They're all separated, and they all have different markings on them, so the runners know which ones to grab. It's not... it'd be tough to.
And behind the scenes, you have Manny Rodriguez and John Halverson, doing their job, making it all work, regardless of when these things happen.
Yeah.
It's not an exact science. That's the trouble. These races are dependent. This race is dependent on hundreds, thousands of volunteers doing a great job, and 99.99% of them are doing that. So a massive shout out to the volunteers, because literally events like this couldn't take place if it wasn't for the volunteers. Interesting to see Girma there to ride a picture in the ladies' race right up alongside Namo. She's almost banging elbows with him. She looks to me, I don't know what you think, Tanya, but she looks like she's chomping at the bit.
Yeah, and I think she was signaling the other male there, the pacer, to keep up. So, she looks like she might be poised to make a move here.
And it is beginning to stretch out a bit. I know they're on the bridge, but that is the thinnest we've seen it, I think, almost like a single file since the gun. An hour and a half ago, 1 hour 31 minutes into the race. Girma here looking very comfortable. Now she's whether or not it's because they're running into a bit of a breeze.
Yeah, she's trying to protect herself a bit there.
I don't know, but that pack has been, for the last hour and a half, there's been 3 or 4 abreast, running along without any wind and looking comfortable. Now they're stretching out into single file.
We're definitely at a point in the race where things will open up. People are really going to start to feel that temperature or their preparedness.
Yeah. And Tanya, when do runners start thinking about making a move? We watching many of the elite races and seeing Tim's commentary on them. I tend to look for Tim on the telecasts of the Chicago Marathon, the Boston Marathon, the New York City Marathon, and others, and it seems like it's different every race when someone will make a move. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late.
So there's probably a few factors here. If it seems like they're on pace for records, and that's probably one important goal for this group. And then secondly, it's just how are things playing out. You want to chase a record, but also you have to look at the conditions and the competition around you. So if you're on pace, this group may as well stay together, keep working together. But if the pace was starting to falter, someone might push for it.
The men have crossed 30 kilometers now, and they've done that in 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 10 seconds. It is a group of 7 runners, including Julius Kogo, the pace setter, So they picked it up a bit, Tim, because they're down to 3 minutes and 3 seconds per kilometer.
But I've just got a message, and I think we can see now in this men's group the pacemaker has gone.
Yeah.
Kogo has dropped out, so the last of the pacemakers in that men's contest, none of them did opt to run the full distance. I don't blame them. They've done a wonderful job at a quick tempo.
So it's 6 runners now in the men's race. Abera Kuma, Albert Career, Getu Faleki, Sadat Ayana, Martin Koske, and Tekele are the 6 runners who are now competing in the Ottawa Marathon. At Dugner Tekele.
So I guess the question is, will one of them step up to push the pace along?
Yeah.
What's going to happen in the next kilometer?
They're very close together now. Doesn't look like anybody's moving ahead. We should mention we've been talking about these pace setters. In the amateur race, of course, there were also pace bunnies for all different times. Boston qualifying times, everything from 3 hours to 4.5 hours. Runners who run at a prescribed pace, they volunteer to do this. And for the amateur runners in the race who are aiming for a particular milestone time, they want to get in 3.5 hours or 3:45 or 3:50 for whatever reason, whether they're trying to qualify for Boston or simply achieve a personal best, or they just want to finish in a certain time. These volunteers run the race. They run with bunny ears on their caps, their running hats. They carry a sign for the whole 42 kilometers, and they do that just to bring those other runners along. And it's a great role that's fulfilled by a great group of runners led by Mark Wigmore, and those runners stay in for the whole race and lead a group of runners all the way to the finish line. It's very good work that's done by that group, and I've been a pace bunny.
You have?
At this event, yeah.
I bet you look great with those ears.
Yeah, I've got pictures if you want them.
Mark, in that women's race, things are happening. It does look like Germa is beginning to ease away. She's the one who I suspect has been, if not vocally, then sort of with her body language, encouraging that pacemaker, Namo, to push on, and that is significant. It's the first time we've seen a gap between any one individual and the rest of the pack, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the first opening we've seen in either the men's race or the women's race. So it is Germa who is taking the early lead here.
And I would say it looks most comfortable too, from body language.
Would you say that? Yeah.
At the same time, the group behind could just be a little more cautious and recognizing they still have a ways to go.
Yeah.
And if they stick together and work together, then
that's an important point. It's not unusual to see somebody break away for a time but then get reeled in again, right?
And they've got another 50 minutes of running to go. They've got 1:36 on the clock. If they run 2:25, she's got a long way to go. So yeah, it could be other acts to follow. The only thing is about Germa is that she trains with 2015 world champion Mari Dibaba in Addis Ababa. There's a big pack of them who train together, and Dibaba is a very, very smart racer. When she won that world title in Beijing in 2015, she out-sprinted 2 or 3 other ladies on the track in the stadium at the end of the race. So I suspect Germa comes here not only with great training, but also with a lot of good advice in her head as well, and that counts for a lot. Did you rely upon that sort of thing, Tanya? You always have these important people in your career that will guide you and provide the coach. Coach and peers even, right? That,
right.
Like you said,
runners,
they're people that you that challenge you and maybe make you look at your running a little bit differently, or the goals that you've set, and get advice from folks that have been there before.
That's interesting to see Germa there to write a picture. That's one of the ordinary drink stations, not an elite drink station. These water stations for the masses are every 3K. And she's grabbed a couple of cups and just got a few sips of water. She's powerfully built, isn't she, for a marathon runner? She's got strong thighs. She's not the traditional long, linear shape that you expect from marathon runners. But
I think if you were to meet her in person, it's hard to see on the screen. They're still petite, right? Compared to the rest of us now.
Yeah, it's all relative, right?
Now that was that was telling. A little glance over her shoulder there, and that gap is growing pretty quickly.
And interesting that she did take the water, because I wonder if that's a signal that they're feeling the humidity a little bit. They're feeling a need to do more than just their minimum special drinks they've created themselves.
We did see Reed Cool said earlier dumping water on his head very early in the race. Now, That could just have been him, but and he seemed to be sweating a lot very early in the race as well. So I'm sure that the runners are feeling the conditions. And you mentioned it, Tanya, that there is a bit of humidity in the air.
I think so.
It is a bit sticky for this type of temperature. It's not in the 20s, but it doesn't feel it doesn't feel entirely cool either. So
it's interesting. So the pack, all of the runners behind these elites are many Canadians that have not had a chance to train or experience our nice warm spring weather yet. So we've had this delayed long winter. So I'm sure the crowd behind these folks are perhaps feeling that the differential in the heat and humidity.
Yeah, that is the challenge of a spring marathon. If you're going to, if you're not going to be training elsewhere, you start out. You train through the winter. You're bundled up. You're wearing heavy gear. You do all this training in the winter. You get in some spring runs. You're finally running in shorts and a t-shirt at last, but it's still cool out. And then all of a sudden you run in what can often be very warm conditions at the end of May. And it's the first time you're experiencing those conditions since the previous summer, as opposed to a fall marathon where you train when it's warm and it might even be cooler on the day of the race, right?
Yeah.
Mark, at 30k, you mentioned Reed Coulthard at 30k. He was 1:37.01. So Reed has slipped back a little bit. He's heading for a time around 2:16.5 at the moment. He must be going through a torrid time back there. And in the men's elite race that we're seeing at the moment, I'm impressed with this guy Kuma. He's really getting the bull by the horns that now. He's beginning to impose himself, even though they're together in the red shorts right in the middle. He's just beginning, to me, to kind of dominate the group, and he's calling the shots. They're keying off him at the moment, which sort of puts him in control.
Yeah, it's down to 4 runners at the front of the pack for the men now. Abera Kuma, Albert Career is in that group as well. And meanwhile, in the women's race, we can see that Tigist Gurma is still opening up some distance between her and the rest of the field, and we can see Dana Pidereski, the lead Canadian woman, there on the right of your screen as well.
Well, Kuma and Kosgei look the strongest in that men's race, and
you can see the gap there with the women opening up for sure.
Yeah,
big gap in that ladies' race now. Wow. That is growing every minute,
and that's
it?
substantial enough to be. That's a hard one to close. It's starting to get a little tougher, and they're moving into
unless something happens with her, right? If she, for some reason, has gone out too fast and slows down, then maybe she falls back to the pack. But no sign of that so far.
You have to trust your own judgment, though. I mean, Tanya, can you ever remember running a marathon where you made some kind of a move in the last hour of the race and then the wheels came off? It all went wrong in the last 15 minutes?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Didn't want to put you on the spot.
There's one or two medical tents in my past. Definitely.
But
because it's hard to gauge even at halfway. It's hard to gauge sometimes how things are going to go. And I really feel the race does start. There's that milestone at halfway, but there's something about 30K that physiologically, that's where the race begins. It can end and begin at that same place.
Well, and that's the thing with the marathon, isn't it? There were, which is quite different from, say, a 10K, where you can be feeling good at 30K in a marathon, and at 38K you can be feeling terrible, right? And you don't know. There's nothing you can draw on at 30 kilometers that will tell you how you are going to feel at 38 or 40K. You might still feel good, or you might be on the verge of collapse at that point, and it's hard to read. That's part
I think
of
there's
the
a lot of
challenge
faith in this, right? So you have to believe training. You have to hopefully have, with advisors, or gotten your head around the conditions and how your fitness fits with the race course, and then there's this sort of, you have to just believe in yourself that when you hit that 30K mark that you can make a good read on whether you are in a place where you can push a little bit more, or is it a situation where you're going to have to maybe just hold the pace, or even just back off to feel like you can finish it off.
Yeah. Faith is important in marathons.
Do you know, there's certain controversies about pacemaking in the latter stages of races. So, for example, here you've got Tigist Girma leading the ladies' race to right of picture. She's got a gap of maybe 50 metres or more on the pack. She's got a pacemaker, and I don't think the other ladies necessarily have. That are in second, third, fourth. And, you know, at 25k, there was a pack of 7 of them. She's got a pacemaker now assisting her.
Oh, hold on. Are they showing the women? Yep.
They must have been listening because he stepped aside. Good timing. So Girma now on her own.
There she is.
I think that evens the playing field.
I think that's
a little.
great. Yeah. That's a real competitive game now. This is when the fun begins. So everyone's picking up some important water here. The very important milestone. We're at 30k.
Yeah, we've just passed 30k.
Yeah, everyone's picking up water. You can see they're going to take time to get it. They're not going to miss this one. Girma is carrying her water with her for a little bit.
So her time at 30 kilometers, 1 hour, 43 minutes, 32 seconds. She's 8 seconds ahead of 3 other runners at that point. So 1 hour, 43 minutes, 32 seconds for Tigist Girma of Ethiopia.
And Rockcliffe is, so this area is rolling a little bit.
Yep.
So it is a bit challenging. I think this is when you speak to you're starting to feel the previous 30k. Then you throw a few little hills in, and that mixes it up a little bit more too. Your legs are starting to feel a little beaten up.
And she looks, she looks very strong, and her stride is very good, but she also looks sweaty. I mean, you can tell the heat and humidity, which is an unusual couple of terms to describe when it's 16 or 17 degrees, but
it matters for a marathon.
For a marathon, that's warm temperatures. So you can tell that's an element today.
Well, she's running with real poise, isn't she? She looks comfortable. She looks well balanced. She's heading, Mark, if she keeps the tempo up, she's heading for a time of around 2:25:30, which would be a personal best by over a minute. She already set that personal best of 2:26 in Guangzhou last December. So under the tutelage of Haji Adilo, she's having an incredible period here at the moment. And this is her first ever race in North America. She's never even raced in Europe. She's never raced anything other than marathons. She's a pure out-and-out marathon racer, and that's really rare, Tanya, because nearly all marathon racers like to do the odd half marathon.
Well, certainly. I mean, a big component of this is, speed. So an aerobic speed where you need to be able to maintain speed. I've always been coached that you want this differential between a 10K and half marathon speed as part of your overall fitness.
Things are happening in the men's race as well. It looks like Albert Career has started to push a bit, and we're seeing the kind of a single file sort of development in the men's race. That is Abera Kuma, who is staying with Career, but Sadat Ayana and Martin Koske seem to be dropping back from those 2 runners at this point. So we've got Albert Career of Kenya and Abera Kuma of Ethiopia, who are at the front of the men's race as they make their way through New Edinburgh.
But look at their rhythm, eh? They just look so it almost looks like they're picking up the pace. Like there's a nice rhythm.
Oh yeah, you could tell there was a sudden surge in intensity in the runners, and you can see even just with this was a group of 4 just a moment ago, and already one of the 4 is way in the back of that picture, and one is dropping off very quickly. Those other 2 runners, Martin Koski and Sadat Ayana, both have dropped off quite a bit.
Well, the men have just gone through, 35 kilometres with Albert Career in 1:46:25, Mark. And he is looking pretty aggressive. He grabbed his drink at that drink station, and Kuma didn't bother. He just sailed straight through the 35k drink station, and it'll be interesting to see with 7 kilometres to go whether or not that becomes significant, because Korea got some sustenance there. He is a 2:08 athlete. He ran that in Lake Biwa in March last year, and rather like Girma there in the front of the women's race, Korea, the taller of the 2 men, has never run anything but a marathon. He's done 8 marathons, never done anything but marathon racing.
So it is a 2-man race for the moment on the men's side, and on the women's side, Tigist Girma continues to lead the way.
And I find it interesting that there's not so much a chase pack, but there's definitely some women back there keeping an eye on her. I don't know if the gap is opening, or there's a couple folks there trying to keep the gap consistent at least.
The lead men are going to make a left-hand turn onto Sussex, and then they basically follow Sussex Drive all the way around back into downtown Ottawa. Here they go, making that turn, and they'll follow Sussex Drive. This is not Sussex yet. They're going to make a quick right here, and then they'll be into the final stage. You can see the puddles.
They're definitely opening a gap.
Yeah, look at the puddles on the road there from the rain that we've had in the last couple of days. It's been a wet year so far in Ottawa, and Career is pushing hard. You could see he just picked it up a couple of minutes ago and left behind 2 runners, but Barakuma has stayed with him, and they will soon make a left-hand turn onto Sussex Drive. They'll follow that all the way through and turn onto Colonelby Drive, and then they really just have final stretch to the finish line here.
Yeah, Correa at the age of 25 has run under 2:10 3 times. He's a pretty consistent racer. He's done 8 marathons, and interestingly, 3 or 4 years back, he won the Eldoret Marathon, which is the big town up there in the Rift Valley at about 7,000 or 8,000 feet, where so many of these Kenyan athletes live. He won it in 2 hours 21 minutes, which, bearing in mind the altitude, is a big performance, and there would have been so many aspiring runners in that sort of domestic race. It's quite an achievement to win a local race in the town of runners.
You can see the split times at 35K for the elite men. The men are now, the lead men anyway, are now past 36 kilometers. And again, it is a 2-person race between Career and Kuma. 1 Kenyan, 1 Ethiopian. And on the women's side, it continues to be Tigist Girma of Ethiopia. Remember, the women's race has been dominated by Ethiopian runners over the last 9 years in Ottawa. 9 years in a row, it's been an Ethiopian woman who has won the race.
And the women behind her are 7 seconds back, so it's interesting that they're holding that distance. They're not slipping, so Girma is not necessarily pulling away.
No, it is interesting, and the tall figure in green is the fellow I mentioned earlier, Spector, who is an American athlete of, pretty solid ability for a male runner, and he is almost acting like a bridge for those other.
He's pulling the girls behind him,
along.
exactly. Yeah, he's probably playing an important role there to bridge that gap.
But Girma does look strong, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's got a lovely balanced rhythm.
Almost like there's
stride.
another gear, do you think? That it's hard to tell, but if someone were to come up.
It doesn't look like she's pushing as hard as she could. There's a comfortableness to her pace right now.
Well, here's the thing, and I don't think we've mentioned this. She is the Olympic bronze medalist. She got bronze in Rio back in 2016. And funnily enough, Jemima Sungong, who was the gold medalist in Rio, got busted last year. And then literally a couple of weeks ago, in the last 10 days, the silver medalist, Eunice Jet Kirui, got busted. A Bahrainian, a former Kenyan running for Bahrain. So really sadly for the sport, and it's the gorilla in the corner of the room, really. The gold and silver medalists from Rio have been busted. In many people's eyes, that would make Tigist Girma, this lady in blue, easing away and maybe heading for victory, makes her the Olympic champion.
Yeah,
unofficial.
Yeah. So great look right now at both the lead men and the lead woman, and it's very likely that in your picture right now are the 2 champions. We don't know which male runner will pull away here. Could be an interesting race to the finish between Career and Kuma. Well, I've been watching the men a little bit, and it looks like Albert Career has tried a couple of times to drop Kuma, and Barakuma has hung on and stayed with him. So while other runners have fallen back, and I'm not even sure you can see. You can just barely see the 3rd place runner in the picture on the right of the screen there. But it really has come down to these 2 men, and here's another attempt by Career, I think, to kind of pull ahead.
Yeah, he is. It's almost like if they were boxers. He's coming in there with big punches, and Kuma is absorbing them and hanging in there. But yeah, you often get this, Mark, where a real race develops in the latter stages, and the pace picks up so much that they open up a big gap on the chasers. And you can see third place is maybe 100 meters back, probably about 20 seconds back. I think that's Ayana, who has isolated himself. It's going to be tough for him to hold on to that third place under the circumstances. They've been running for 1:53, so we've got about 15 minutes of running to go, because they're pretty much heading for something around 2:08.
They're at about 37.5 kilometers, give or take a couple hundred meters. And again, you can see for a moment their career looked to be just slightly ahead of Kuma, but now they're side by side once again. And there's been a bit of an ebb and flow to this over the last few hundred meters. Meanwhile, nobody is close to Tigist Girma, 26-year-old Ethiopian. She continues to lead the women's race. And unless she hits a wall or slows down considerably, you'd think this is her race to lose.
And our top Canadian remains Dana Pidereski. She's running back quite a few minutes, but so it's a 6-minute gap. But what's interesting is she's running in 7th place. So overall, in these kind of conditions, you might see some of the top runners slow down and even drop out, and Dana,
she might
just
catch some
nice
of
and
them.
steady, and overall placing could improve over the next few kilometers.
And she seems to be on pace for a significant personal best as well, so we'll see if that continues to play out. Rachel Hanna is a couple minutes behind Dana Pidereski, and then another minute back is Krista Duchesne. Those are the top 3 Canadian women right now.
Well, Dana Pidereski must have been confident, Mark, because the news that came through over the last couple of days is that she was going to go with a 2:29 pacing group. Now, that would have been 6 or 7 minutes quicker than her personal best. So she's obviously oozing confidence, and the way she's running today justifies that.
And perhaps maybe took into consideration the conditions. If you're saying she was going for 2:29, but it seems the pacing isn't quite 2:32, I think I heard earlier.
I'm really impressed with Girma. She looks so strong in that ladies' race, and a very contrasting situation, really. She's on her own, having to keep concentrated and focused because they are chasing hard. She hasn't got the race in the bag yet. Probably going to win, but she needs to absolutely stay on her game. Whereas in the men's race, that two-way battle is fascinating. I do like the fact that Kuma has done so much of the work through this second half of the race in the red shorts. He's now having to absorb all these blows, Mark, from Albert Correa, who's, I guess, was one of my outsiders. I have to say his personal best is an impressive 2:08, but Kuma's run 2:05. On paper, he's almost 3 minutes better.
By the way, Reed Coulsett has passed Berhanu Degefa, so Reed Coulsett is now the lead Canadian in the race. He's in 8th place overall, so he's also passed some of the runners who were part of the original group who were leading the race. So Reed Coulsett seems to have
running a smart race there,
picked things up a little bit. Yeah.
Doesn't that epitomise Reed, though? You know, running a well-judged, solid effort to sort of pick off people in the latter stages who have perhaps misjudged it slightly.
Yeah, good for Reed. We had some questions just based on there. He's just watching Reed on another monitor, and he's just thrown a cup of water into his face as he's passed through one of the water stations here. And he's about 7 minutes behind the leaders, but he is the top Canadian now with a 2.5-minute lead on Berhanu Degefa. So there's Reed Coulsett. And again, continuing to look at his watch every 100 meters or so. So he's preoccupied with his...
Chasing a time,
preoccupied with his
pace. But great rhythm. I mean, I think he's running better here. I guess they're in the final couple kilometers, right? So he's the final
7.
So he's really got his eye on that goal line there.
And that time, that split at 35k for Reed, just checking my tables, big complicated tables, so it takes a bit of time. He's heading for about 2:16.40. So, you know, he wanted a 2:13, 2:16. When you dial back and build in the conditions to the chemistry of this race, so to speak, that's probably about the same. It's good running from Reed. These conditions are not ideal. It is warm.
And it's lonely out there. He dropped his compatriot very early, and I think he's been running pretty much alone. And that's a tough go, right?
Well, you compare it with the leading pack of men, the leading pack of women who had, you know, plenty of company for 2/3, 3/4 of the distance.
Yeah.
Reed's the opposite, 3/4 of the distance, all on his own.
Yeah, tough.
The lead men are approaching 40 kilometers. They're back on Colonel By Drive in the final stretch of this race. So it's all going to come down to the next few minutes. And it is Albert Carrier and Barakuma who are leading the race.
39K.
Yeah, there's 39K. They've just gone under one of the bridges over the Rideau Canal here. You can see the Shaw Center, the convention center in the background, along with the Chateau Laurier Hotel, the Fairmont Chateau Laurier Hotel in downtown Ottawa. They are traveling south on Colonel By. They are eventually going to curve around a bend in the canal, cross the Pretoria Bridge, make a right turn onto Queen Elizabeth Drive, and head towards the finish line. So it's all going to happen in the next 9 minutes or so in the men's marathon at Ottawa Race Weekend. And really, for the last couple of kilometers, it has been Albert Carrier and Barakuma. Carrier has been the one pushing it a bit, and Kuma has been the one counter-punching and keeping up in every case. And right now they are side by side. It looks like one of these two runners will be the winner of the Ottawa Marathon.
Well, their 39th kilometre mark was a 3:01, so they are keeping it very, very honest up at the front. I mean, that is, it's about 2:07.5 tempo. Kuma in the red shorts is a more busy runner, isn't he? Physically, the way he moves, the arm carriage and everything, much more different to Carrier, who's very compact, slightly knock-kneed. Aesthetically, neither of them particularly pretty-looking runners, although I'd say Kuma looks like he moves slightly better, but actually that all counts for nothing if one of them starts moving away from the other. It's going to be quick. In these conditions, anything around 2:08, very, very solid racing. And in contrast, the isolation there of Tigist Girma is getting more and more stark, isn't it?
On the women's race, there's a bigger and bigger gap all the time now for Tigist Girma ahead of the rest of the field. So there you have it. Those are the leaders of the Ottawa Marathon, the 45th edition of this race, with more than 3,500 participants expected today. It really has come down to these three runners to find out who will be the champions of this event. Tigist Girma on the women's side appears poised to capture the title. There she is, passing 35 kilometers, so we'll get an update on her pace and her time. She's 2 hours and 47 seconds for 35 kilometers. 2 hours 47 seconds for Tigist Girma at 35 kilometers, passing through a fueling station. And on the men's side, we can tell you now that Albert Carrier is trying to push it a little bit. And
he's making a big break.
Yeah,
I
here
think
he goes.
I think Girma's on the screen right now.
Yeah, there we go.
There we got the men.
Albert Carrier trying to push things a little bit. They have passed 40 kilometers in 2 hours, 1 minute, 21 seconds. And looks like Albert Carrier is going to turn it on here, and he is leaving behind Barakuma very quickly. There's a gap that has opened up quite suddenly.
It's interesting. Kuma made a point of stopping to grab water.
Yeah.
Actually hesitated a little bit there. Yeah, so maybe he's really feeling.
But he missed his 35k.
Yeah, maybe there's something there.
You know, that could have been
really starting to feel it now. Yeah.
But this is the biggest win of if it's going to be a win for Albert Carrier. He won Vienna back in 2017 in 2:8:40. That was his first big win. This will be his second win and a bigger win for Carrier when you look at the caliber of this field. If he's not caught by Kuma It's not over till the fat lady sings at the finish line.
Yeah,
So I
a
thought I
lot
could
can
bring that
happen
in
in
somehow,
100,
but-
even in the last 100 meters.
But obviously he felt something that at 40 kilometers, he's looking over his shoulder a little bit now, but at 40 kilometers he thought, okay, this is the time to dial it up a notch with really maybe 6 minutes left in the race to try to drop the hammer down and leave Kuma behind. And so far it's working. He keeps looking over his shoulder, but it doesn't seem like the gap is closing. It opened very suddenly. It was partly because of Career speeding up and partly because Kuma stopped to get his fueling, but it does not appear to have closed very much. And very soon Albert Career will make a turn onto the Pretoria Bridge, and then another right turn onto Queen Elizabeth Drive, and when he does, he'll be headed towards the finish line.
And Mark, that split at 40k, kind of because of the aggression of their racing over the previous 5k, these two has dragged them back into 2:07 territory. They're heading now, Korea certainly looks to be heading for something just under the 2:08 mark, which is special. In these conditions, a 2:07 clocking is supreme.
Albert Career of Kenya is the leader. Again, the course record, the event record, I should say, because the course is a little bit different. The event record 2:06.54. That does not appear to be under threat today, but you can see the Career has just made the turn onto the Pretoria Bridge, and Kuma just a few seconds behind him, but that is significant this late in the race. We're going to see Career come into the picture now. Tigges Gurma on the right still leading the women's race, but Albert Career is into the final stretch. This is the point when you turn and you know the finish line is just ahead of you. It's not a short stretch on Queen Elizabeth Drive. It can be deceptively long. You feel like you're almost there, but the finish line is still a little ways away. He's just past 41 kilometers, so 1.2k to go for Albert Career.
What's that, 3 laps of the track, Mark?
Yeah.
3 laps of running track. And Kuma in the background in the red shorts
looks good.
is working so hard. And there was a nervous little glance over the shoulder there from Career, because the gap between them is how many seconds? About 4 seconds, something like that?
Yeah.
And Kuma could do this. He could come back.
Got
but he's
a
going to
good
have
rhythm
to.
there, yeah.
Oh. Career,
So when
look
you're in
at
the
that.
lead, I'd
gonna
say
say it's more
less
like
looking
shoulder.
behind and more focused on that finish line.
Yeah.
Just keep moving. You'd be focusing on your arms, smooth rhythm.
Do you know what? I could never resist looking over my shoulder. And everybody just goes, don't look over your shoulder.
could
And I
you
just go,
not?
no, I want to know what's going on back there.
Yeah.
Even if it actually compromises your performance.
I'd say it's about a 5 or 6 second gap. I tried to time it when they passed by a line on the road, but it doesn't seem to be expanding anyway.
No, it's not. And of course, you know, Kuma has got a goal. He's got a target. I mean, it's like in a relay. You take over that baton in a 4x400 relay. It's great to be on somebody's shoulder. Nobody wants to be 1 meter ahead of somebody.
Yeah.
So Kuma's got a target, and Korea clearly worried. Maybe that's the thing, that the adrenaline is pumping in Korea because he's so scared.
Albert Career of Kenya is leading the Ottawa Marathon, and you know you have to be careful about these shots that are taken from a distance. They can kind of collapse the space between the runners. So there is a gap of a few seconds between Career and Kuma as they start to get nearer and nearer to the finish line of the Ottawa Marathon. Albert Career with the lead. The Ethiopian Abera Kuma a few seconds behind him. That gives you a
This
bit of
gives you a
perspective
better
now of
view,
the gap.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it is, I'm going to say 4 or 5 seconds between the two runners. We'll get back to the women's race in a moment, but Tigges Gurma is still leading that. And very soon we're going to start to see the runners approaching the finish line in the Ottawa Marathon. Reed Coolset, by the way, is about to get to 40 kilometers, so we'll have an update on him very shortly as well.
The gap
Here
behind
comes
that
Albert
leading-
Career.
Sorry, Mark. The gap behind that leading pair back to Ayana in third place was about 35-40 seconds at 40k. So Ayana isolated in third place. Very different for these two.
Albert Career looking at his watch a couple of times. Looking over his shoulder at Abera Kuma. But it does not appear as though the gap is closing. And it is Albert Career's race to win here. at the Ottawa Marathon. Just over 2 hours, 7 minutes now.
Well,
still looking at his watch, maybe hoping to break 2:08. He's got just a few hundred meters left now for Albert Carrier.
You know that Kuma is absolutely spent when he can't close that gap at
Yeah.
all. It's about a 7-second gap now, so I think Carrier's got it in the bag.
The tape is ready to be broken at the 2019 Ottawa Marathon, the 45th edition of the race. And here comes Albert Carrier of Kenya, continuing to look at his watch, blowing kisses, and jumping at the finish line. Albert Carrier of Kenya, the Ottawa Marathon champion for 2019. And in second place, Abera Kuma of Ethiopia. Very strong finish for Albert Carrier. And he never seemed to falter as the group thinned over the course of the last 7K. He always seemed to be the one that was pushing the limit, testing the other runners.
No, that's right, and that's a personal best for Albert Carrier. Unofficially, I got him at 2:08.02. It's a personal best by some 15 seconds, and a big win. What a way to get close to the 2:08 barrier for the 25-year-old. In March last year, he ran 2:08 2017 for second in Lake Biwa.
And here's Sadat Ayana, who has just crossed in third place from Ethiopia. So we have the top three finishers in the men's race. Very soon we're going to see Reed Coolset coming to the finish line as well. So we'll look forward to seeing what kind of time Reed gets. But Albert Carrier carrying the flag of Kenya at the finish line, running back out onto the course to greet some of the spectators. There are many Kenyans who have gathered to watch the race, as there are every year. There's Reed Coolset. And considering we had that group of about 6 men together, the field is really spread out in the last few kilometers. There's quite a bit of time between first place and fourth place, for example.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that battle between the leading pair is what dragged them clear. Probably another minute or so put on the rest of the group over that last 5K, simply because of the quality of that contest.
Here comes the fourth place finisher. I think it is going to be Martin Koske, who will cross the finish line fourth.
You can see Reed here. Yeah, there. Oh, there's your fourth place.
Yeah.
Reed.
Martin Koske finishing fourth in the Ottawa Marathon. He'll take home some prize money as well. $5,000 for fourth place. And Tekele in fifth place. Adugna Tekele. And finally in sixth place, it's Getu Faleke. So there's Reed Coolset on the right of your picture, the top Canadian man. It's all about the time for him. Reed really is a bit of a fidgety runner. He touches his face a lot. He looks at his watch a lot. He never looks entirely comfortable.
Yeah, he's really been pushing today all the way through.
Yeah,
you're right. Very intense. You're very focused.
But you know, you have to say, massive pat on the back for Reed Coolset for having stuck to the task here. When you know, that must have been a real blow to lose John Mason, his pacemaker, so early in the race. What did John last? About 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And no criticism of John. If he didn't have it, he didn't have it after that personal best recently in Rotterdam. But Reed here has worked for an hour and a half all alone, really well. He's gutted this one out.
Reed Coolset had hoped today would be an Olympic qualifying race for him. It's remains to be seen whether that'll be the case. We don't know what the Olympic qualifying time will be for Canada. There are other runners in the mix, of course, as well, and this won't be his last chance. He's got a window that we're really just at the front end of the time period when runners can qualify for the Tokyo Olympics, and so there will be other marathons for Reed Coolset. We're looking forward to seeing what his finishing time will be. Meanwhile, Tigist Girma of Ethiopia continues to lead the women's race. and nobody is anywhere near her, and she doesn't look uncomfortable. She doesn't look like she's about to lose the lead.
No, she looks strong. There's a hint of a grimace now from Germa. That's forgivable, I guess, with 2 hours, 12 minutes on the clock. Did you have any, Tanya, at this stage, when you were in the latter, whether you were winning or not, in the latter stages of a marathon, did you have any sort of mental routines or mantras you repeated to yourself to get yourself through the pain and to the finish line?
Yeah, actually, I think a big focus for me was going to more the technical side and trying to focus on arm movement, staying as efficient as possible, and looking ahead to, hopefully there was someone to focus on ahead, right, that could pull you along. As you can see,
hopefully not. If you were in the lead.
So for women, maybe it's a little different, right? You're always looking for that male ahead of you that you can try to catch. Poor Reed here, he's just excellent run all by himself though today, and Germa from what point, 30K on, certainly she's been on her own as well.
Reed Colstead about to make the turn onto Queen Elizabeth Drive, crossing the Pretoria Bridge, and he'll soon be at 41K.
To me, Reed really personifies the discomfort of the final miles.
Yeah.
He looks fabulous, but you almost feel like his feet hurt to hit the ground. There's just this drive through that discomfort.
But
right?
he's getting a lot of support. Reed's profile in Canada is rightly very, very high. So just about everybody watching knows Reed.
Yeah. And two-time Canadian Olympian, heading towards the finish line now. Just over a kilometer remaining in the Ottawa Marathon for Reed Colstead, and he will.
And you can see in this view, you have runners going the other direction too, right? So you're getting support from that group as well as you go, not to mention spectators along the way.
Yeah. Those runners going in the other direction,
the half marathon,
I guess, might be part of the half marathon, which is underway now as well.
He looks great.
And Tigges Germa looks pretty good as well. Very interested to see what kind of time she puts in and whether she sustains this pace. It's amazing how at a certain point, Tanya, you go from finding it all such a grind and that stretch. I find the stretch from about 35 kilometers to 41 kilometers is really challenging. The kilometers seem to mentally, they just seem longer and longer. They see the markers seem further and further apart, and you're battling to hold on. You're trying to sustain your pace, and then all of a sudden, when you get in this final stretch in this marathon or the final kilometer of any other marathon, you get this renewed energy, this excitement.
You should be able to get this done at this point, right?
It starts to become achievable again, and it's no longer in doubt, and the energy rises, and there's a bigger crowd of people cheering you on, and you suddenly feel like, yes, I can do this. It starts to get exciting again.
The funny thing is that it's coming at you. For that previous hour and 3/4 for these guys, or I don't know how long for you, Mark, before you got to 35K, you knew you were going to hit that black zone between 35K and 41K. So was there anything you could do to prepare for it mentally?
It's there, right? And the more times you do it, the more prepared you are, I think, and you can get through it. The first time you run a marathon, that's the big question, is can you break through that wall and get to the other side? But after you've done it a few times, you just have to live through it. There are many marathons I've run where I've just said, it's going to hurt, it's not going to be pleasant, but it is going to be over, and you can get through it. You just have to persevere.
Reed is moving well here, isn't
great.
he? There's still, the stride length has shortened a little bit, but he's still got good cadence, good leg turnover. He's putting in such a tough performance here. He's got to be hurting like mad.
And through these final miles, I think the key is the support on the sideline, and Reed and he has his family here, I think, and you have this a coach out there on the course, maybe driving you along, pushing you along verbally, so that everyone, all 3,000 runners here today, have a support network behind them. And maybe that's part of what gets you through these final miles, is just knowing those folks are there and watching for you.
He's still checking his watches, Reed.
I know. He's fastidious. He's
intense.
Yeah.
And yet, you sit and eat with him. I've had 3 or 4 meals with him the last couple of days. He's the most laid back
he's a
guy
great
in the
guy.
world. And he was the last to leave the dining hall for the elite athletes. He just sits there and chats and talks. And
Here he comes in the final few hundred meters of the Ottawa Marathon. Reed Coulsett waving to the crowd. I'm sure he appreciates the support. He is the top Canadian finisher in the Ottawa Marathon. Reed Coulsett, the two-time Canadian Olympian, crossing 2 hours, 17 minutes, 35 seconds, and presented immediately with the Canadian flag. Congratulations to Reed Coulsett.
And he looks in good order, doesn't he? I'd have been on my knees. I think I just want to lie down. Can I have a mattress ready, please? Would have been my demand before the race. He looks great.
And Tanya, you know what that feeling is like, to be handed the Canadian flag and to wrap it around yourself at the finish line of an event.
I had one opportunity, 2002 here in Ottawa, but had the same. Unlike Reed, who took this handily, definitely had Danuta Bartosek at a couple seconds behind me and was racing along this whole stretch. It never seemed to end, but made it to the finish line first.
Well, and at 39 to lift the Canadian title is quite something.
Good for Reed Coulsett.
Bittersweet, I suspect, because he was hoping for 2:13 and he's run 2:17. Unofficially 2:17:36, something like that.
Yeah. All right, we should go back to the women's race because this is turning into a rout for Tigist Girma of Ethiopia. She has dominated this race. She has about 2 kilometers to go to the finish line now.
She definitely doesn't look as comfortable, though, as she was earlier,
see her stride has changed a little bit?
She seemed very concerned, looking at what's going on behind her. So,
yeah, there's nothing behind her at this point, but she does look a little more labored.
Yeah. She's really owned this race for the substantial last part of this race, for sure.
You know what's interesting is, considering she's the Olympic bronze medalist, she's only broken 2:30 twice before today. Now she's going to smash it today. She's on schedule for something around 2:25, I think 2:26. But she's run with real confidence here, hasn't she? And authority. The way she imposed herself on that pack about half an hour ago and eased away from them, she looked confident. And she's getting her just desserts here, but even if she's hurting, she's been grimacing for much of the last 10 minutes or so.
That confidence is going to come from those months of training, right, that have come before this, that she brings to the table. Knows she should come in knowing what her fitness is capable of. And the unknowns, of course, can be the competition and the weather itself.
But when you break away from the group, you always have that nagging feeling in your mind, I'm sure, that you've done it too early, or that you've pushed it too hard, and that it's going to come back and haunt you. That is the big challenge of a marathon. Anybody who is trying to run a specific pace, you're always worried that maybe you've pushed it too hard and that you're going to bonk sometime in the final 5K. I don't think that's going to happen to her. I think she's certainly got enough of a lead, and she can sustain this enough. She doesn't look like she's about to collapse, but that's the worry you have, is that you're going to pay a price for it, and that you can go from running, your time can drop by a minute per kilometer, and all of a sudden you're out of it again.
You know, she's run 3 marathons per year, which is one too many for most people. In 2016, 2017, 2018, she does love to race, and maybe she's spread herself a little bit too thin since that Olympic bronze medal back in 2016. 3 marathons per year, there's very few super elite or Olympic medalists who would take that on, Mark.
Yeah, apart from the 2018 Boston champion, of course, the Japanese runner who runs 10 or 11 marathons a year. He just won Vancouver as well.
He runs, you're right. He runs more or less a marathon a month, in around 2:10, 2:15, that sort of region. And then, of course, he won Boston last year in that pouring rain, those astonishing conditions.
I was there for that one.
So was I. I was trying to commentate with my shoes filling with water. The rain was that bad.
Yeah.
But
I got wet as well, Tim.
Huh?
I got wet as well on the course.
You did, yeah.
Yuki Kawauchi. Yuki Kawauchi was the runner we're talking about.
Yeah. Legend.
Yeah, and for some reason able to run, and he has a full-time job as well.
He's just turned pro. About 3 months ago, he jacked in he stopped working and has gone full-time. Probably to a marathon every 2 weeks now.
Yeah. All right, Tigist Girma has just passed the 41-kilometer marker, so she has just over a kilometer to go in the Ottawa Marathon, and by now I'm sure she has a sense that she can close the deal here, that she can win this race. And Dana Pidereski at 40 kilometers was at 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 1 second. So she continues to be...
she's moving up in placing, too, as she goes here.
She's
She's now in 6th.
She's now in 6th. Rachel Hanna's in 7th place, 2 minutes back. Krista Duchesne's in 8th place, another 40 seconds behind Rachel Hanna. Very interested to see what pace those Canadian women come in at. But this is all Tigist Girma's race on the women's side. Less than a kilometer to go for the 26-year-old from Ethiopia.
Well, having said, Mark, that she's run 3 marathons per year in 2016, 2017, 2018, she's used to running on tired legs, but this is her first race of 2019. So for her, she's had, well, almost 6 months break since her last race. She ran in Guangzhou in China. She won in 2:26 back in early December. That is her personal best, but she might well break that here today. Yeah,
she's got about 3 minutes left of room to break that personal best of 2:26.44. We're now at 2:23.47. So she's got the chance to break it here. She's got probably about 700 meters to go.
Last 9 winners have been Ethiopian, so this completes the 10.
Yeah. There will be a decade of Ethiopian dominance on the women's marathon at Ottawa race weekend. She continues to look over her shoulder. At this point, you have to figure the gap is insurmountable. She cannot see anyone behind her, and pretty soon she'll be able to see the finish line. So she need not worry anymore, I don't think.
But we don't know what sort of degrees of pain she's going through. I think she's hurting. It looks like Reed, doesn't she? She's still moving well. Great cadence, but she's really hurting.
She doesn't seem to be pushing it as hard as Reed Coolset was in this stretch. Starting to wave, though.
Yeah, is that what she was doing? Is she celebrating with a couple of minutes to go? Unusual.
Tigist Girma of Ethiopia, perhaps on course for a personal best.
She's definitely driving for the finish, though. She's not relaxing and taking advantage of that lead. She looks like she's still giving it a go, going after a good time.
Is that a smile or a grimace? It's hard to tell.
Oh, a grimace.
That's a grimace.
Yeah.
and you know, when you're looking over your shoulder like that, and you know there's clear daylight there, but you still check every 30 seconds, is because you are in so much pain. Yeah, she's desperate. So this is a characterful run.
She's waving, though.
That's great.
Soaking up the cheers. Knowing that victory is hers. This is going to be a $30,000 payday for Tigist Girma. Going to be close when it comes down to whether or not this will be a personal best, though. She's got about a minute of room now and a couple hundred meters left to run. They have the tape ready at the finish line for the champion of the Ottawa Marathon, Tigist Girma, pressing hard as she runs the final few hundred meters of this race. Looks like it will be a personal best for Tigist Girma. She's celebrating now, waving to the crowd.
And Mark, she's beaten a good field here. 10 athletes started when the gun went 2.5 hours ago. 10 athletes were broken 2:30. This is a very strong field in depth.
For the 10th year in a row, it's an Ethiopian woman winning the Ottawa Marathon. Tigist Girma with a personal best by perhaps 10 seconds or so, and you can see she felt it at the finish line. She's taking a minute to recover now at the finish line before they present her with the Ethiopian flag.
Second
and here
place
comes
finish.
Mogus in second place. A little bit closer than I would have thought. She covered a lot of ground. Betelhem Mogus of Ethiopia finishing second.
2:27 exactly her time.
Being congratulated at the finish. Now, got to be a little bit concerned for Tigges Gurma, who's still sitting on the ground. Now she's on her feet again and waving to the crowd. She's recovered. She's going to kiss the pavement now at the finish line. She'll be presented with the Ethiopian flag. And there's a little bit of a celebration ritual here at the finish line.
I've never seen that before. Job done.
She looks tired, though.
Great job.
Personal best for Tigges Gurma.
I think what was lovely about the images we got of her in the last few kilometers, Mark, too, was the mortality of it. You could really see her hurting. You know, you could live those last few kilometers with her, couldn't you? On what is there's a bit of breeze about, but it's still a warm morning.
More runners approaching the finish line now. And the pace of this is going to pick up quite a bit. It's amazing how quickly we go from seeing runners every 10 or 20 seconds to seeing a couple of dozen runners per minute. Here's the third place finisher for the women, Etefarihu Temesgen of Ethiopia. So it's a sweep of the top 3 spots for Ethiopia as their dominance of this race continues. So unofficially, Tigges Gurma, Bethlehem Mogus, and Etefarihu Temesgen, the top 3 finishers for the women. You see another male competitor cross the finish line, and again, really within half an hour, we're going to see runners coming in much more frequently, and then it'll just be a crowd of people crossing the finish line.
And for Temesgen there in third place, that's a personal best as well by best part of a minute. In fact, her previous personal best, Mark, was here 4 years ago when she was in 8th place, so she's made the rostrum here. Yeah. That's quite some step up.
It'll be interesting actually to get perspective from the runners on whether the conditions are that challenging. We've interpreted it as being a challenging day, but some of the times are really fabulous.
Well, hopefully we'll get a word with Reed. But his experience was different to some of the others who had people to race against. This was a time trial almost.
That's got to be tough. Oh. Dana Pidereski is the top Canadian woman. We're keeping an eye on her as you look at Tigges Gurma at the finish line. There's Dana Pidereski, and she continues to have a couple of people running with her. Dana Pidereski was on pace for a personal best, a significant personal best. We'll see if that continues to be the case. Personal best for her, 2:36.08. And she's about to make the turn onto Pretoria Bridge and then head into the final kilometer of the Ottawa Marathon. So still within reach, I would say. It's going to be close, but she might be able to do it.
I just can't help but think I've seen these amazing elite runners come from all over the world. It's such a treat to see these kind of times being raced right here in Ottawa. Just think of the crowds, the kids that get to see these kind of performances right in their backyard.
Well, Dana was at 40K, 2:28.47, and just projecting that forwards to the finish, I think she's going to run around 2:37, so might miss her PB by about a minute, but you know, intrinsically in these conditions, it probably represents a personal best. Yeah. She's had good pacemaking throughout from Chris there, who's Chris Balestrini, who's still there in the black vest helping. A great job from him.
The morning after running a 10K.
Useful training run.
Yeah.
So the question is, did she pick a pace that was a little aggressive for the conditions today, or her fitness level, or this is just the way the day goes?
That's a good point, because what was her halfway time?
She was going out fairly aggressively. I think you said 2:29 pace.
Dana was 1:15.37, so she was on schedule here for 2:31, and she's
going after a big PB, and maybe it caught up with her after the halfway mark.
A couple of minutes easing back at halfway, and she might have been a couple of minutes quicker here at the finish. Who knows?
You can see the toll that it's taken on some of these runners. So, you don't often see, it's not every year that you see runners who are on the ground or near collapse at the finish line, especially those who haven't had a big sprint to the finish. So I think the temperature is a factor,
here,
right?
Yeah.
You've got elite athletes who are requiring medical support at the finish line, several of them. So it's not, the conditions obviously are not so good that people are crossing the finish line comfortably.
Well, that's Salome Nyirakundo of Rwanda, the 21-year-old who's in a little bit of trouble at the finish line just near our commentary positions. But she won Montreal back in September in a 2:28, set a national record for Rwanda. So, she's found it tough here today because she's finished outside 2:30.
Getting a good look at Dana Pidereski
look at her
now.
go. This is great. What a great finish.
About a kilometer to go in the Ottawa Marathon for the lead Canadian woman. This would be a big win for Dana Pidereski in a field that also includes Rachel Hanna and Canadian Olympian Krista Duchesne, the third-place finisher in last year's Boston Marathon.
And Rachel Hanna, on paper, a few minutes quicker than Dana Pidereski. But, of course, Rachel's had a lot of injury problems the last 2 or 3 years. She did say she'd actually be happy with something around 2:34 today. I'm not sure she's going to hit that. But, again, the conditions have to be mixed into any times we see.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to see Rachel or Kristen too often during this race. So, it's possible they were running a more lonely race perhaps out there. It'd be challenging.
Yeah, this is the difference for Dana Pidereski compared to Reed Coulsett, as she's had company and he didn't. He basically, Tim from would have been
Reed
10K into the race. Reed Coulsett was running by himself.
It was like 35 minutes, wasn't it? So about 10 or 12K.
Yeah.
John Mason had to step off the road, and Reed was on his own. That might have cost Reed a minute or two, but I don't think it's massively affected his
You still
day.
have to run the full distance, even with the pacer. You still have to get through it. So credit to Dana here.
Yeah, you still, no matter what, you still have to run. It's still your body that's carrying you to the finish line, but it's got to feel a lot longer when you're out there by yourself, right?
Yeah, that's a pacemaker there. The other pacemaker in the green shorts and white top is Uwajanedza of Rwanda. He's a 2:16 guy. Did that in Dubai last year. But he was meant to be pacing at 2:29, which was, of course, Dana's original target.
Yeah.
So she's had to dial back pretty substantially.
And as you say, this is a slow run for him. That's why he looks so comfortable at this point.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if Chris Balestrini in the black there, who's been with them throughout, if this is his first marathon.
Maybe it is.
I've got a feeling it is, and he's just doing it as a training run.
Finish it off to get a time on the board, yeah?
Yeah, kind of. What are they on? 2:35 right now.
Well, if you're going to do a 20-mile easy run on Sunday, why not do a marathon? What's another 6 miles, right?
Yeah. Are you saying miles for me, or do you talk miles here? I don't think you Canadians talk miles.
Dana Pidereski in the final few hundred meters of the Ottawa Marathon. She will be the top Canadian finisher. And it's been very quiet at the finish because most of the elite field is already through.
Yeah, it's going to be just the same for Dana as for Reed, isn't it? She'll have become the Canadian champion, hopefully, in these next few minutes. But it's bittersweet because she's run a lot slower than she wanted, missed those qualifying times for major championships coming up. There's Doha, the World Championships at the end of this summer in late September, early October. There's Tokyo in August next year. And both of them have fallen a few minutes shy of what they really were shooting for.
But an added bonus to this is that you're competing in a world-class field. It's deep, and she's going to have looks like maybe even top 6 placing in this deep field. So you got to give credit for that.
Yeah, still only 5 home. You're right. Big gap behind.
Look at Chris Balestrini imploring the crowd to cheer on to cheer on Dana Pidereski. And look, he's turned around and he's going in the other direction now. He's not going to finish the race after all of that.
But that's nice that they've eased back and left Dana to have a moment in the sun.
There we go. Dana Pidereski.
That's still a great time.
Top Canadian finisher in the Ottawa Marathon in 2019. Presented right away with the Canadian flag. And she looks tired. Shaking her head as well. She doesn't look completely thrilled with the outcome here today.
No, well, it always takes a day or two to process. Missing goals that you might not have achieved, and but don't forget there's 3,000 people running behind you that are so amazed at what you've just accomplished.
Here comes Krista Duchesne. We're going to get to see her cross the finish very soon.
Wow, that's a good run from Krista. Close second.
Yeah.
2:37.19 for Dana Pidereski. You know, she's 8 or 9 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes outside of what she wanted. That's why she's disappointed, I guess.
And Chris Balestrini has actually just walked around the timing mats at the finish line so that his time does not register. I guess he doesn't want this to count as his first marathon, maybe. Maybe he doesn't want it on his record as an official marathon because he was pacing, right?
But it's valid. It would have been perfectly valid if he'd crossed the finish line.
It'd be valid, but maybe he wants his first marathon to have a faster time than this.
So Krista just ran Boston just a few weeks ago, right? So.
Yeah, here comes Krista Duchesne to the finish line of the Ottawa Marathon in just under 2:39. Great run for Krista Duchesne.
But Krista said that Boston, the conditions were so bad, it was so humid that she purposely ran a controlled 2:45, knowing during the race that she would come here. She made up her mind that she'd save it for a better day.
Krista always looks to the sky at the finish of a marathon. There's some great finish line photos for her in some of the races that she's run, including when she won the Canadian half marathon title a couple of years ago. She just looked so joyful at the finish line. So a great run for Krista Duchesne. She really did not decide and announce that she was running in this race until very late in the process. She wanted to make sure she was ready. And now she's posing for pictures at the finish line with Dana Pidereski.
Well, she said she purposely kept her participating here very, very low profile. Krista, she didn't want the pressure of any media coverage and that focus, that spotlight.
It is a good feeling when you stop running at the end of a marathon, isn't it, Tanya?
Well, is that Rachel Hanna in shot?
Here's
really
Rachel Hanna.
Suffering.
Yeah.
Tough day. Good for her to finish, though, knowing it didn't go the way she probably wanted it to.
I think the weather really has been more of a factor than we expected.
That sun is quite intense. It's quite bright.
Well, you think it's 2:40 has just clicked by on the clock, and Rachel is a 2:32 runner. That was at Houston back in 2016.
Oh, she's looking bad there.
Yeah. She's...
Shades of Callum Hawkins in the Commonwealth Games last year. Do you remember that?
Wow.
Collapsing when he was way out in the front in Australia.
I hope she's okay. This is a real struggle to get to the finish for Rachel Hanna. I hope they're ready to greet her at the finish line, because I don't think she's going to have much left by the time she crosses.
And she was so optimistic at the press conference 2 days ago on Friday. She was saying she's learned to ease back and put on a little bit of weight between marathons. She feels much better for it. Her training's been going really well. She was hoping for 2:34 today. Well, it's going to be outside 2:40.
And she's so close to the side of the road, too. She's not even running a straight line to the finish line. She's looking very, very wobbly. Rachel Hanna finally crossing the finish line of the Ottawa Marathon. And hope that she gets the help that she needs. She will likely get right into a wheelchair at the finish line.
And that's Rachel in 8th place.
All right, she's still on her feet, so...
Tough as nails there.
Yeah, good for her. I mean, it's
Good stuff.
I would not have been surprised to see her collapse at the finish line after the way she was running in that final stretch. I think they are going to insist upon a wheelchair for her. So let's hope she's okay. Meanwhile, not far away, she's the third Canadian to cross the finish line. Not far away, Krista Duchesne and Dana Pidereski are talking to John Stanton of the running room, celebrating their day. But it's obviously very tough for Rachel Hanna. Krista Duchesne is over to check on her now.
Well, last year she was 28th in Berlin in 2:42. She's run 2:41 here today. She was 12th in Toronto in 2:37. And she found out the hard way that she was just too thin. She said she was getting stress fractures because of poor nutrition and that focus upon getting her weight down and being in really good shape for as little weight as possible for marathons. And yet she's an athlete, Tanya, who knows the business. You know, she's running the World Cross Country Championships. She said she loves cross country as part of her annual cycle and build up for the spring marathons. So she's just unlucky, I guess, that her body in particular doesn't take to marathon running that well unless she's absolutely okay with the dietary side.
Yeah, you're right. Every body can be so different, and different training styles too, right? Sometimes it's a matter of finding what kind of load your body can handle, and like you were commenting on cross country, like what's the cycle you need to rest and recover and maybe gain some weight. I think there's
she's back
too
on
light,
her,
right?
She's back on her feet,
Right.
which is good, and she's smiling and talking to others, so she seems okay. Krista Duchesne
Fabulous.
looks really happy at her race today.
Well, that's your top three all in. That's great.
Yeah. So that's a relief that Rachel Hanna's okay, because she looked very, very uncomfortable in the final few stages of this race.
And that's kind of neat, the three Canadians, 1, 2, 3, and 6th, 7th, and 8th, Dana Pidereski, Krista Duchesne, and Rachel Hanna. And you know what? Marathon running is a pretty unforgiving business, but you know better than either of us, Tanya. You can give 101% and still come out with what is a disappointing result. But as you say, you process that over the following few days.
You have to put things in perspective, right? Yeah. Did you learn something during the training block, those 3 months of training, that you can then apply to the next opportunity? You learn a lot. I think the crowd behind these folks, these fastest folks, appreciate, what do you learn through the whole journey, the training journey, and then also the race itself that then you apply to everyday life even. Yeah.
So Dana Pidereski is the top Canadian woman in this race. The top Canadian male, of course, was Reed Coolset, who is standing by with our Timothy Walker. Timothy.
When we talked at the news conference on Friday, we talked about weather, we talked about, how you were feeling, and how did that all unfold out there for you today?
The feeling was good. Especially earlier on when it was still cloudy, I was surprised at how well I was moving. And then, the conditions got really tough. It sounds like I'm making excuses, but they were what they were, and I had to battle them. And I just tried to keep my head in it and make the most of the situation. And I was happy with how I came in. Like, not the time, but given the conditions, it was good.
Well, you're a champion, so let's focus on the positive. But when we were watching you out there, you were alone an awful lot.
Yeah, I had a pacer. He went 10K, and then from 10K, I didn't see another runner until 32K. Yeah. And I passed him right away, and I passed another runner right about there, and then I didn't see anybody else again.
Okay. So is that hard for in the mind when you're out there alone?
Well, it's not ideal, but I was also prepared for it, knowing how fast the leaders were going out, and just looking at the field, not knowing that there wasn't going to be anybody around me. So I was prepared for it. It's not the way I would have, if I could have planned a race, it'd be more bodies around me. But it is what it is, and I just tried to focus. And it's probably why I was looking at my watch so much. Because without other runners, it's sometimes you don't have those cues, and so I'm just making sure the splits look all right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well, Tim, there you have it. Reed Coolset saying he was alone from 10K to 32K. Then he passed two runners. Then he never saw another runner again. for the rest of the race.
That is one of the toughest ways of doing it.
That's like going out on running 42K by yourself and doing a training run, but racing it.
The only thing is, he did say to us yesterday, and he said just then, he knew this was coming at him. He expected to spend much of the race alone, so mentally he was prepared.
And great to welcome John Halverson. Let us introduce you first, John, before you start providing your expert analysis here. John Halverson, two-time Olympian, holder of the course record in the 10K at Ottawa Race Weekend for almost 20 years, and the race director and the president of Run Ottawa for many years, who is retiring after today from this event of a sort, going back to a full-time job in the technology sector, but will continue to be involved as a volunteer going forward, we hope, we expect. And John, it's been a pretty good day, but the conditions, I think, were a little warmer than we expected.
Well, once the sun came through, and that also made the wind pick up. That was the interesting part. So it was nice and calm in the beginning, and with Reed running that long by himself, the wind would definitely be a factor, especially in those tough kilometers coming back from the east side of the city, so heading west from Rockcliffe on Sussex. So the wind was quite strong there. Yeah.
Okay. John, look, we don't have a lot of time to reminisce, but this event has been a big part of your life. What now, for 30 years in so many ways. You were an athlete competing here, then you became a volunteer, you were on the board of directors, you were the race director in a volunteer capacity for many years, part of the race committee that organized the event, and then 6 years ago you took on the full-time role of running the organization behind Ottawa Race Weekend that puts on so many other events in our community every year, a membership-driven organization with something like 800 members now, and so you've seen growth, you've seen other big challenges, hot days, rainy days, having to reroute the course based on construction, based on the flooding this year with a bridge being closed, and you've done that all so well and provided such great leadership. Congratulations on a great run.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think all those things that you're mentioning is just expected when you do this job, and Tim can attest to the same thing. You organize races as well, and you have to be prepared for all of those changes, and some of them you can plan ahead for, and some you just have to react to, and that happens even on any race day. There's stuff that happens. I heard something about water tables missing, and these type of things. I mean, I don't know where they went. They could be floating in the river, to be perfectly honest. We've seen that before. So
that high.
Someone's using
water
them as a
level was that high. So these things happen. We have to go with it, adjust, and whether it's that type of issue or other issues. So that's the job, and it is partially what makes it exciting. It is quite. I'm not out there myself, but I'm listening to the action on the radio, if you will, and providing any input if needed. But largely speaking, the team is fantastic. Deal with all these things, but you listen to it, right? And people say I should write a book one day about the stories. Maybe Mark, you could help me with that.
Sure, happy to. It is such a complicated event to organize, and I think that can't be overlooked. The fact that even if you're putting on the Super Bowl, you're doing it inside a facility that is contained. You're doing security for that space, you're doing logistics for that space. It's a big event, but it's all happening in one space. This is an event that plays out over a field of play that is 42 kilometers long, right? So there are intersections to contend with, volunteers who need to be in a certain place, organizational memory. You have a team of really, a handful, fewer than half a dozen full-time staff, and then hundreds of volunteers who each need to know their role on race day.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that makes our event very, very unique is we do it over 2 days, and we have 6 races, and a lot of people that come here the first time, they're sort of amazed because most people are used to sort of 1, maybe 2 races happening on a day. But we start, at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock on the dot with 3 different races that don't interfere this morning. Yesterday we had 3 races with a bit of, busyness on Cartier Street. So this is just what we do, and it's exciting.
John, you've been doing this for 20 years. It's probably dominated your lifestyle, and you're going to the tech sector, we know. But is there a part of you thinking you might look over your shoulder in 6 months or maybe a couple of years and want to come back?
Oh, for sure.
You've done your shift.
For sure. Well, like I've said to many people during this weekend, I'm pretty sure I'll be around here next year doing something. If nothing else, like I said, the VIP tent behind me, that looks pretty good too. So
we're going to sample it in a few minutes. Yeah.
But no, I'll find something, I'm sure. And like I said yesterday too, I want to support the folks who've been supporting me.
There's the order of finish for the men's marathon. Albert Career winning with an 11-second lead at the end over Barakuma. Reed Coulset, the top Canadian, in 8th place. The top Canadian woman was Dana Pidereski. She is standing by. Let's look at the results for the women's race, and you can see Dana Pidereski finished 6th in this event. So she'll get prize money for that in addition to being the top Canadian. Tigist Gurma ran away from the field and won by 26 seconds. But let's hear from Dana Pidereski, who is standing by with our Timothy Walker.
Well, congratulations, but you don't look happy. You're the champion.
No, I'm happy that I toughed it out, but it was not an easy day for me. It was just hard conditions. I didn't feel as good as I had hoped I would feel, and truly, I didn't really accomplish any of my goals except for finishing.
And winning.
True.
And winning.
That's true.
Did the heat become a factor? Because we're seeing a lot of the elite athletes dropping.
It was, it's my thing more the humidity. Just probably feeling like you had a layer of moisture on your body the whole time. But that's the marathon, and I think that every tough one makes you even that much stronger. So,
great attitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Dana Pidereski sounding disappointed, saying she didn't achieve most of her goals today, but you do have to respond to the conditions out there, and you have to acknowledge that when the conditions aren't perfect, you're not going to have a perfect outcome.
Well, look, and Dana's experienced enough to know that you can give 101% and still come up with fall short of your goals. But I mean, I think Tanya said it very, very succinctly. You process those disappointments in the following 2 or 3 days, and actually have to come out and say, I gave everything I could on the day. That was the best I had on the day. That was the best me.
Absolutely. John, what are some of the memories that stand out for you from the last 20 years of being involved in organizing this event?
Well, I think for me, it's the evolution of the event. I think that really stands out. There's specific incidents. Sometimes perhaps the ones that stick in our head are the ones that weren't so good. Naturally so, because it was it was something that we now look at.
You don't have to itemize those.
No, we don't have to itemize them. There were a few, and then there's the little ones, and then there's the funny stories. I mean, there's a lot of funny little stories. A lot of them dealing with medical, thinking that something is a real emergency, and learning that someone ate too many chocolate bars before the race because that's good for you. All those sort of weird stories that come out.
Yeah, Tim has a few treats here, by the way. Just so
there you go.
Yeah, Tim was stocked up and ready.
I never got time to eat them.
Yeah, if you needed to fuel at any point during the broadcast, you were prepared. But there have been so many great athletes who have been through this event as well. That's something that I think is often overlooked. This is an event that is participation driven. Tens of thousands of runners are focused on this every winter and every spring to be part of this event. It mobilizes the community. You go for a run on a Sunday morning in Ottawa, and you're bound to encounter large groups of runners who are out there training for this event. It's inspiring to see that and to know everybody's working towards this weekend. But the other element of it is, because of the elite side of it, we've been bringing people to this community and sharing this event with them and sharing the city of Ottawa with them. We've been bringing people in from out of town as well who run this race, who see it as a destination event for them. So that international aspect to it, I think, is very powerful.
Yeah, and a lot of that has been driven. We've worked hard to get the IAAF Gold Label event or recognition, and we know that a lot of the runners from perhaps some more unusual places that we don't really promote much in, be that India or China and Asia in particular, and even parts of Europe, we get them coming, and I think that recognition comes from that, and it's great for the city.
Yeah, it is great for the city. And John, a lot of the credit goes to you and to the terrific team that you work with and the volunteers, Manny Rodriguez and so many others. So congratulations on, as I say, we got to call it a great run.
Thank you.
For you as the leader of this organization. It'll be very, very tough to fill those shoes going forward, but we're glad that you've promised to stay involved in the event as a volunteer in the future. John Halverson, longtime race director and president of Run Ottawa. Tim, some quick final thoughts from you on what has been a very interesting day of racing.
I would say to John, don't get too involved. You'll end up doing the same job, just not getting paid. So make sure you step away a little bit and get that break from it. No, just two fantastic races. You know, I love competition. I mean, we talk about the times, we get too caught up in that, but you know, great competition head-to-heads are what is sustainable in this sport. We've had a runaway winner in the women's race. I mean, Germa, brilliant. Correa and Kuma producing a great contest in the men's race. So long may that carry on.
Tim, it's been great working with you again, as always. I enjoy watching you on the broadcasts of all the great international races that you cover. We're always so happy to have you with us here in Ottawa. Thank you for making the trip and joining us with your expert analysis and insight, and I hope to see you next year.
Thanks, Mark. No, my pleasure. Love this place. Love it.
On behalf of Kimothy, Tanya, Tim, and their entire crew, thank you for watching. More coverage to come on Rogers TV.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Launching a canoe from a dock is a simple procedure. The paddle partner should climb aboard by placing one hand on the dock for balance and the other on the outside gunwale of the canoe. Then, you swing the stern of the canoe close to the dock, and the stern paddler climbs aboard using the same procedure. Once settled, push away from the dock and paddle away.
Hi, my name is Dana. I'm a grade 11 student at St. Paul High School, and I'm in the co-op program at Rogers TV. I work on Daytime Ottawa, and I greet guests as they come in, and I mic them up and bring them into the studio. I also work on Multicultural Window, where I do VTR and camera. If you have any interest in video, you should come and volunteer at Rogers TV, where we'll teach you audio, camera, and VTR. Come join us.
Good night.